The world ended on a Tuesday. Alex remembered the exact moment the system descended, a blinding flash of light that seared across the sky, followed by a voice that wasn't a voice, echoing directly in every human mind. System integration complete. Classes assigned. Survival protocol initiated. Then came the monsters, the dungeons, the collapse of everything familiar. 3 months later, Alex stood in a crumbling government building that now served as a class assessment center, staring at the glowing screen before him with a sinking feeling in his gut. Class: Pedagogue. Rank: F. Description: a teacher class focused on knowledge transmission and student development. Combat capabilities: negligible. Survival utility: low. ***. Special ability unlocked: Mentor's Gaze. Around him, others were receiving their assignments with reactions ranging from triumphant shouts to despairing sobs. A burly man to his left manifested as a flame knight, his hands erupting with fire that he struggled to control. A woman across the room became a healer, her fingers glowing with gentle green light that immediately drew a crowd of injured survivors begging for help. Pedagogue. The assessment officer, a harried-looking man with a clerk class floating above his head, squinted at Alex's screen. Haven't seen one of those in weeks. Last one got eaten by a sewer rat mutant on day 2. Alex swallowed hard. Is there any way to change it? The clerk snorted. System doesn't do re-rolls, kid. You get what you get, and you got the short end of the stick. He tapped on his own tablet. Let's see. With an F-rank non-combat class, your options are limited. Oh, here we go. There's an opening at the Blackwood Academy for exceptional youth. Exceptional youth? Alex felt a flicker of hope. That's what they call it, the clerk said without looking up. It's where they send the kids nobody wants. The ones with useless classes, behavioral problems, or... He glanced at Alex's screen again. Or teachers who can't teach anyone useful. It's in the northern wildlands. Remote. They've been asking for staff for months. Nobody lasts more than a few weeks. Alex's shoulders slumped. So that's it. I'm just shipped off to some failing school in the middle of nowhere. Be grateful, the clerk said, finally meeting his eyes. Most people with F-rank classes end up as dungeon fodder within a month. At least this way you get 3 meals a day and a roof over your head. Maybe you'll even make it to the 6-month mark. He handed Alex a printed slip. Transport leaves in 2 hours. Gate 3. Don't be late. The journey north took 3 days in a rattling armored transport that smelled of sweat and despair. Alex shared the vehicle with a dozen other assignments, mostly low-rank non-combat classes like accountant, florist, and one unfortunate soul who'd manifested as a professional complainer. The landscape outside transformed from the ruins of the city to increasingly wild territory, where mutated flora twisted toward a sky that no longer looked quite right. On the morning of the 4th day, the transport ground to a halt before a set of wrought iron gates that hung crooked on their hinges. Beyond them stood Blackwood Academy, or what remained of it. The main building was a 3-story stone structure that might have been imposing a century ago. Now, ivy crawled up cracked walls, several windows were boarded over, and part of the roof had collapsed on the east wing. A faded sign above the entrance read, Blackwood Academy for Exceptional Youth, with the word exceptional looking particularly unconvincing. End of the line. The driver grunted without turning around. Alex gathered his meager belongings, a backpack with 2 changes of clothes, a water flask, and the class assessment papers that felt like a death sentence. As he stepped out into the chill northern air, the transport doors slammed shut behind him, and the vehicle rumbled away without another word. He was alone. For a long moment, Alex simply stood there, staring at the decaying building. This was his life now. A useless class in a useless place, teaching useless students. The system had reshaped the entire world into a brutal survival game, and he'd been given the equivalent of a participation trophy. You the new teacher? The voice came from the shadows of the entrance. A man emerged, tall, gaunt, with hair that had gone prematurely white and eyes that held the weary look of someone who'd seen too much. Above his head floated the class designation, Academy Headmaster, rank D. Alex, he managed, his voice cracking slightly. Alex Carter. I was assigned as. I know what you were assigned as, the headmaster interrupted. We get the dregs here. The system's rejects. He looked Alex up and down. You'll fit right in. He turned and walked inside without waiting for a response. Alex hurried to follow, his boots crunching on gravel that hadn't been tended to in months. The interior was worse than the exterior. The grand foyer was dimly lit by flickering mana crystals that cast long shadows across peeling wallpaper. Dust motes danced in the few shafts of light that penetrated the grimy windows. To the left, a staircase missing several banister posts led upward into darkness. "We have 27 students," the headmaster said as he led Alex down a corridor lined with doors, most of them closed. "All of them have been deemed problematic. Low talent scores, useless classes, behavioral issues. Some are here because their families paid to have them disappear, others because nowhere else would take them." He stopped before a door marked Faculty Lounge and pushed it open. The room contained a few mismatched chairs, a table with one leg shorter than the others, and a cold fireplace. "This is where you'll prepare your lessons. Not that it matters. They don't learn." Alex set his backpack down. "What exactly am I supposed to teach them?" "Whatever you want," the headmaster said with a shrug. "Basic literacy if they lack it. Mathematics. History of the world before the system. It doesn't matter. The truth is, Mr. Carter, these children have no future. In a world where strength determines survival, they have none. Your class is equally useless. So you'll babysit them until they turn 18, at which point they'll be released into the wildlands to probably die within a year. Or until you quit, which most teachers do within a month." The bluntness of it hit Alex like a physical blow. He'd known his situation was bad, but hearing it laid out so coldly. "Why keep the school open then?" he asked, a spark of defiance rising in his chest. "Because the system requires it," the headmaster said. "Every settlement above 500 people must have an educational facility. We're technically a settlement. Barely. And someone has to contain these children. Better here than causing trouble in proper towns." He handed Alex a key. "Your room is on the 3rd floor, last door on the right. It's not much, but it's yours. Classes begin tomorrow at 9. Your students are in room 4B. Don't expect much." With that, he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor until they faded into silence. Alex's room was exactly as described, not much. A narrow bed with a thin mattress, a small desk with a wobbly chair, and a window that looked out over the overgrown grounds. He unpacked his few belongings, the motions mechanical, his mind numb. As night fell, he lay in the dark, listening to the sounds of the academy. Creaking floorboards, distant whispers. Once, what sounded like something breaking glass. He thought about running, just walking out the gates and taking his chances in the wildlands. But the clerk had been right. Without combat skills, he'd be dead within days. This was his life now. Morning came gray and cold. Alex dressed in the cleanest clothes he had, a simple button-down shirt and trousers that had seen better days, and made his way to room 4B. The corridor was empty, but as he approached the classroom door, he heard voices from within. Another one. They never last. Bet he cries before lunch. My money's on him running by tomorrow. Alex took a deep breath, summoned what little dignity he had left, and pushed the door open. The room fell silent. 8 students looked up from various positions around the classroom. They ranged in age from maybe 14 to 17, and they all shared the same look, a mixture of defiance, boredom, and something deeper that Alex couldn't quite identify. Resignation, perhaps, or anger. The classroom itself was a disaster. Desks were scratched and carved with graffiti. One had a leg missing and leaned precariously against a wall. Chalkboard at the front was mostly erased, but someone had drawn a crude monster in one corner. The air smelled of dust and teenage apathy. "Good morning," Alex said, his voice sounding too loud in the quiet room. "I'm Mr. Carter. I'll be your teacher." No one responded. A boy with messy black hair in the back row put his feet up on his desk and closed his eyes. A girl with sharp features and sharper eyes stared at Alex as if trying to dissect him with her gaze. Alex walked to the front of the room, setting down the few teaching materials he'd scavenged from the faculty lounge, a half-used notebook, a couple of pencils, a textbook on pre-system history that was missing its cover. "I thought we could start with introductions," he said, trying to sound confident. "Maybe tell me your names and what classes the system assigned you." This got a reaction. The girl who'd been staring snorted. "What's the point? They're all garbage." "Maybe not," Alex said, though he didn't believe it himself. "Fine," she said, not moving from her slouch position. Lena. Class. Mana deficient. Rank. F- if that existed. Can't cast spells. Can't use mana tools. Basically a normal person in a world of magic. Useless. The bitterness in her voice was palpable. Alex looked at her more closely. She was small, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and eyes that held too much intelligence for someone who'd given up. Her clothes were clean but worn, and she sat with her arms crossed as if building a physical barrier between herself and the world. Almost without thinking, Alex focused on her. He didn't know how to use his class ability, hadn't even tried since the assessment, but something prompted him now. He concentrated, thinking about teaching, about potential, about seeing what others couldn't, and his vision shifted. For a moment, Lena appeared as she was, a teenage girl in a classroom. Then something shimmered around her. The air seemed to darken near her, as if light itself was being subtly bent away. Shadows gathered at her feet, not cast by anything in the room, but seeming to emanate from her. And above her head, where her mana-deficient class should have been displayed, new words formed in letters of deepest void black. Void Empress sealed. Rank. Potential, world-altering. Description, one who commands the emptiness between stars, the darkness between moments. Not mana-deficient, but void-attuned. Current state, dormant. Awakening conditions, unknown. Alex stumbled back a step, his hand catching the edge of the teacher's desk to steady himself. The vision lasted only a second before fading, leaving Lena looking exactly as she had before, a girl with a useless class in a failing school. But he had seen it. The truth. You okay? Lena asked, her voice still edged with sarcasm, but with a hint of genuine concern. Look, if you're going to faint, do it away from me. I don't need another mark on my record. I'm fine. Alex managed, his heart pounding. He looked around the room at the other students. The lazy boy in the back. A girl with scars on her knuckles who looked like she'd been in too many fights. A boy who couldn't seem to sit still, his fingers drumming a constant rhythm on his desk. What if they weren't useless? What if the system, or whatever governed it, had made a mistake in how it categorized them? What if his class wasn't about teaching basic literacy to hopeless cases, but about seeing what no one else could see? Mentor's gaze. The ability name made sense now. Actually, Alex said, his voice stronger than it had been all morning. Let's try something different today. He walked to the chalkboard and erased the crude monster drawing. With a fresh piece of chalk, he wrote in clear letters. What if you're not what they say you are? The students stared at the words. No one spoke for a long moment. Then the lazy boy in the back opened one eye. Deep. You write that yourself. Alex ignored the sarcasm. The system assigned me as a pedagogue. Rank F. They told me it was useless. They told me you were all useless. But what if we're not? What if we're just misunderstood? Lena uncrossed her arms slightly. You've been here one day, and you're already losing it. Maybe, Alex admitted. Or maybe I can see something others can't. He didn't elaborate. He couldn't, not yet. But as he looked at these 8 students, these problems and failures, he no longer saw a room full of hopeless cases. He saw potential. Hidden, sealed, dormant, but there. And if he could help unlock it. The classroom door opened, and the headmaster stood there, his expression grim. Mr. Carter. A word. Alex followed him into the corridor. The headmaster closed the classroom door behind them, cutting off the students from view. I watched through the observation slot. The headmaster said quietly. That little speech. Very inspirational. Very naive. I was just trying to. I know what you were trying to do. The headmaster interrupted. Give them hope. Make them believe they're special. Every new teacher tries it. It never works. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Let me be clear, Mr. Carter. These children aren't just low talent. They're dangerous. The boy in the back? He put his last teacher in the infirmary for a week. The girl with the scars? She nearly killed another student in a training accident. And Lena? He glanced at the closed door. Strange things happen around her. Objects disappear. Shadows move when they shouldn't. The previous headmaster called her cursed. Alex thought of what he'd seen. The void black letters, the world-altering potential. Maybe she's not cursed. Maybe she's. Don't, the headmaster said sharply. Don't start seeing miracles where there are none. Your job is to keep them contained and quiet until they age out of the system. Not to play hero. Not to give them ideas above their station. He straightened up. Teach them basic skills if you must. But understand this, they are unteachable. They are dangerous. And if you push too hard, you'll get hurt. Or worse, you'll get them hurt. With that final warning, he walked away, leaving Alex alone in the corridor. Alex turned back to the classroom door. Through the small window, he could see the students. Lena staring at the words he'd written on the board, the lazy boy actually sitting up now, the others watching the door, waiting to see what he would do. For the first time since the system had descended, Alex felt something other than despair. He felt purpose. They thought he was useless. They thought his students were useless. But he had seen the truth. And maybe, just maybe, that made him the most dangerous person in the entire academy. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows of Blackwood Academy's main classroom, casting long shadows across rows of worn wooden desks. Alex stood at the front, his fingers tracing the edge of a chipped podium as he surveyed the room. Yesterday's revelation about Lena, the so-called mana-deficient girl who was actually a nascent Void Empress, had left him restless. He'd spent the night poring over the system's sparse information on his Pedagogue class, finding only vague references to mentor-based growth and student-driven progression. Now, facing his full class for the first time, he felt a mix of anticipation and dread. Headmaster Thorne's warning echoed in his mind. They're not just low talents, Alex. They're dangerous, unpredictable. Most have been expelled from half a dozen academies. The man's gravelly voice had been grim. Your predecessor lasted 3 days before requesting a transfer to a frontline outpost. Said he'd rather face mutated beasts than another hour with these problems. Alex took a deep breath, forcing his shoulders to relax. The classroom was larger than he'd expected, with high ceilings and peeling paint that might have been white decades ago. Dust motes danced in the sunbeams, and the air carried the faint scent of old paper and something metallic, like ozone after a storm. 7 students sat scattered throughout the room, each maintaining careful distance from the others. Lena was in the front row, her posture rigid as she stared at her hands folded on the desk. She hadn't looked at him since entering, though Alex noticed her glancing sideways whenever she thought he wasn't watching. Yesterday's moment when his mentor's gaze had revealed her true potential hung between them like an unspoken secret. "Good morning," Alex began, his voice steady despite the nervous flutter in his chest. "I'm Alex, your new teacher. I know you've had difficulties with previous instructors. I'm here to help, not to judge." A snort came from the back corner. Alex's eyes tracked the sound to a boy slouched so low in his seat he was nearly horizontal. He had tousled brown hair that fell over one eye, and he wore what appeared to be sleep clothes, loose trousers, and a faded shirt. His desk was empty except for a small pillow he'd apparently brought from his dorm. "Help with what?" the boy mumbled without looking up. "Sleeping? I'm already excellent at that." A few other students shifted, but none laughed. The atmosphere was thick with tension and something else, a weary resignation that felt heavier than mere teenage apathy. "What's your name?" Alex asked, keeping his tone neutral. "Kale," the boy said, finally lifting his head just enough to peer through his hair. "And before you ask, yes, I'm lazy. Yes, I sleep through most classes. No, I don't care about improving my F-rank apprentice class." Satisfied, Alex felt the familiar sting of dismissal, the same look he'd gotten when people learned he was a pedagogue. But beneath it, something stirred. His mentor's gaze, activated almost without conscious thought, a subtle warmth spreading behind his eyes as he focused on Kale. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the world seemed to shift. Kale's slouched form shimmered, and Alex saw layers. Beneath the lazy exterior, threads of silver light wove through the boy's being, pulsing with a rhythm that felt out of sync with the room. Symbols Alex didn't recognize flickered around Kale's head. Hourglasses, clock faces, spirals that suggested infinite recursion. And floating above him, visible only to Alex's enhanced sight, were words that made his breath catch. Hidden class, Chronomancer, sealed. Potential, S rank. Current manifestation, 0.1%. Warning, temporal instability detected. Alex blinked, and the vision faded. Kale was just a lazy boy again, already settling back into his slouch. But the revelation thrummed through Alex's veins. A Chronomancer, someone who could manipulate time itself. And sealed, just like Lena's Void Empress class. He turned his attention to the other students, one by one, letting Minter's gaze wash over them. In the middle row, a girl with sharp features and knuckles wrapped in stained bandages glared at him defiantly. Her nameplate read Mira. When Alex focused, he saw crimson energy swirling around her like a miniature storm. Jagged runes that smelled of iron and salt hovered in his vision, and the system revealed. Hidden class, Blood Lord sealed. Potential, a rank. Current manifestation, 0.3%. Note, aggression channels latent power. Near the window, a quiet boy with glasses too large for his face fidgeted with a broken compass. His hidden class was Spatial Cartographer, with the ability to map and manipulate terrain. Another girl, chewing her lip nervously, held Gravity Weaver, Potential. A boy with scars along his arms was a nascent pain converter, turning damage into strength. And in the far corner, a student who seemed to blend with the shadows bore the hidden class, Shadow Meld Assassin. 7 students. 7 hidden classes, all sealed, all with potentials ranging from A to S rank, and all labeled as failures, problems, low talents. Alex's hands trembled slightly on the podium. This wasn't a class of misfits. This was a gathering of sleeping titans. The system had marked them as worthless, but his, Minter's gaze, revealed the truth. The question was, why were they here? And why were their true classes sealed? Today, Alex said, his voice gaining conviction, we're going to try something different. No lectures on mana theory. No drills on basic combat stances. I want to see what you can actually do. Mira snorted. What? Like a talent show? We've done this before. They test us. We fail. They tell us we're hopeless. It's boring. Not a test. Alex corrected. An exploration. I want you to pair up and practice whatever skill comes most naturally to you. Even if it's just making a spark. Or lifting a pebble. Or, he glanced at Kale, staying awake for 5 consecutive minutes. That earned a faint smirk from the lazy boy, though it disappeared quickly. The students exchanged skeptical looks, but slowly moved to form pairs. Lena remained seated until Alex approached her desk. You don't have to hide, he said softly, so only she could hear. I saw what you are, not what they say you are. Lena's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. Try something small, Alex encouraged. You told me yesterday you feel nothing when you try to channel mana. What if that's not a weakness? What if it's because you're trying to drink from a cup when you're meant to swallow the ocean? Her brow furrowed. What does that mean? It means stop trying to feel mana. Try to feel the absence of it. The space between everything. Alex moved through the room as the students began their exercises. Mira and the pain converter, boy, whose name was Jax, faced off in a corner. Mira threw a punch, Jax blocked, and they settled into a rhythm of blows that was more aggressive than necessary. Alex watched with Minter's gaze, active, seeing the crimson energy around Mira flare with each strike. She wasn't just fighting. She was unconsciously drawing power from the violence. Kale had partnered with this spatial cartographer, Eli. They stood awkwardly in the center of the room. I'm supposed to map the room? Eli said uncertainly, adjusting his glasses. And I'm supposed to not fall asleep, Kale muttered. This is stupid. Try, Alex said, coming to stand beside them. Kale, instead of fighting your tiredness, lean into it. What does time feel like when you're about to sleep? Kale gave him a suspicious look. Slow. Heavy. Like everything's dragging. Focus on that feeling. Don't try to change it. Just observe it. Alex stepped back, his heart pounding. He was flying blind, giving advice based on glimpses of potential he barely understood. What if he was wrong? What if he pushed them too far and something went catastrophically wrong? For 20 minutes, the room filled with the sounds of half-hearted attempts. A few sparks flickered from the Gravity Weaver girl's fingers before fizzling out. Eli managed to make the distances between objects seem slightly warped, though it gave him a headache. Mira and Jax's sparring grew more intense, their movements sharp and angry. Then Kale sighed dramatically. This is pointless. I'm going back to sleep. He closed his eyes, and as he did, Alex saw the silver threads around him pulse erratically. The air in the room grew still. Too still. The dust motes stopped dancing. The faint rustle of papers ceased. For a single, heart-stopping second, everything froze. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He could see Myra's fist halted mid-swing, droplets of sweat suspended in the air beside her face. Lena's hair hung motionless where it had been falling over her shoulder. The clock on the wall stopped ticking. Time had stopped. Then it rushed back. Myra's punch connected with Jax's guard, the impact echoing in the suddenly noisy room. The clock resumed its ticking. Dust motes swirled again, but everyone had felt it. Heads turned toward Kale, who was blinking rapidly, his lazy demeanor replaced by confusion and a hint of fear. What was that? Eli whispered, his compass trembling in his hands. He walked to the window, looking out at the overgrown grounds of Blackwood Academy. In the distance, the forest loomed dark and thick. Somewhere out there, the system apocalypse raged on, with monsters and factions battling for survival. And here, in this crumbling classroom, he had 7 sleeping giants. Tomorrow, Alex said, turning back to face them, we're going to try again. But differently. No more pretending to be what the system says you are. We're going to explore what you might become. Lena's fingers tightened on her desk. Myra's bandaged knuckles cracked as she made a fist. Kilden slouched back down. As the dismissal bell rang, a rusty clang that echoed through the empty halls, the students gathered their things in silence. But their eyes kept drifting to Alex, to Kale, to each other. The dynamic had shifted. The classroom no longer felt like a prison for failures. It felt like a crucible. Alex watched them leave, his mind racing. The system had given him rewards for Kale's breakthrough. That meant it recognized his role as their teacher. But why were their classes sealed? Who had decided these children were worthless? And what would happen when they truly began to awaken? He looked at his hands, remembering the faint glow of Minter's gaze. He wasn't a fighter. He would never wield a sword or cast a spell. But he could see potential where others saw failure. He could guide these students toward becoming what they were meant to be. And if his hypothesis was correct, if his own power grew with theirs, then every step they took toward their true selves would make him stronger too. The sun dipped lower, painting the classroom in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in the academy, Headmaster Thorne was probably preparing another grim warning. But Alex didn't feel afraid anymore. He felt purposeful. He had 7 students with hidden S-rank and A-rank classes. He had an ability that let him see their true potential. And he had just received his first taste of the power that came from helping them grow. Architect of legends, he murmured to the empty room, testing the words. They fit better than useless teacher. Outside, a shadow moved near the tree line. Too quick to be an animal, too deliberate to be the wind. Alex's new stats made his senses slightly sharper, and he caught the glimpse of someone watching before they disappeared into the forest. He frowned. Were they being observed already? Or was it just his imagination? Shaking his head, Alex gathered his notes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for now, he had planning to do. And for the first time since awakening as a pedagogue, he was looking forward to it. The morning sun filtered through the grimy windows of Blackwood Academy's training hall, casting long shadows across the cracked stone floor. Alex stood before his 7 students, the air thick with the scent of old dust and damp wood. He could still feel the faint buzz of the system notification from yesterday, the +2 to all his stats, the new passive ability, Minter's Insight, that now allowed him to sense emotional states in his students. It was a small change, but it made the weight of his task feel more tangible. He focused on the quiet girl at the back of the group. Lena, the one labeled mana-devoid by every test the system had ever run on her. In the harsh light, she looked even more fragile than usual, her shoulders hunched as if trying to disappear into her oversized academy robe. But through Minter's gaze, Alex saw the truth, a swirling vortex of potential labeled Void Empress, manifestation 0.1%. The numbers were lower than Kale's Chronomancer potential, but the sheer scale of what they represented made his breath catch. Today, Alex began, his voice cutting through the uneasy silence. We're going to stop thinking about what you can't do and start exploring what you might be able to do. A snort came from Mira, the violent troublemaker with Blood Lord potential. Her arms were crossed, a fresh bruise coloring her knuckles from some unseen altercation. More of that touchy-feely crap, teach? We tried that yesterday, and Kale nearly gave us all heart attacks. Kale, the lazy boy who had frozen time for a single, terrifying second, shuffled his feet. It was an accident, he mumbled, not meeting anyone's eyes. Alex ignored the tension. He walked over to Lena, who flinched as he approached. Lena, the records say you're mana-devoid. That means you can't channel or sense mana like other classes, right? She nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. They say I'm broken. That the system made a mistake assigning me any class at all. What if it's not a mistake? Alex said softly. He crouched down to her eye level, ignoring the skeptical looks from the others. What if being mana-devoid isn't a weakness, but a different kind of strength? What if you're not empty, but receptive to something else? Lena's gaze flickered up, a spark of something, curiosity? Fear? In her dark eyes. Like what? I don't know, Alex admitted. But I want you to try something. Instead of trying to force mana like everyone else, I want you to embrace the emptiness. Don't fight it. Welcome it. See what happens when you stop resisting what you are. Mira laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You want her to embrace being useless? Great teaching strategy, Pedagogue. Alex shot her a look. You saw what happened with Kale? The conventional methods have failed all of you. Maybe it's time to try the unconventional. He turned back to Lena. Will you try? For a long moment, Lena hesitated. Alex could feel her turmoil through Minter's insight, a roiling mix of shame, hope, and deep-seated fear. Then, slowly, she nodded. Close your eyes, Alex instructed, stepping back to give her space. The other students watched, some with boredom, others with wary interest. Kale had perked up, his earlier lethargy replaced by a keen observer's focus. Lena took a shaky breath and closed her eyes. The training hall fell silent except for the distant caw of crows outside. Alex watched as she seemed to turn inward, her breathing slowing. Minutes passed, and nothing happened. Mira rolled her eyes, already turning away. Then, the air grew cold. It wasn't a natural chill, but a deep, penetrating cold that seeped into bones. The hairs on Alex's arms stood on end. Across the room, Kale straightened, his eyes widening. Do you feel that? He whispered. Lena's brow furrowed in concentration. A faint shimmer began to form around her, not the colorful glow of mana, but a distortion in the air itself, like heat haze on a summer road, but darker, swallowing the light around it. The distortion pulsed, growing with each beat of her heart. She's doing something, Mira said, her mocking tone gone, replaced by something akin to alarm. The distortion expanded, forming a sphere about a foot in diameter in front of Lena. Inside, the air seemed to tear, revealing not darkness, but an absence, a patch of nothingness that hurt to look at. It was a minor spatial rift, no larger than a dinner plate, but it radiated a palpable sense of wrongness. A gasp escaped Lena's lips, and her eyes flew open. She stared at the rift in horror, as if seeing it for the first time. I didn't mean to. The rift wavered, unstable. With a sound like tearing silk, it collapsed in on itself, leaving behind a lingering chill and a faint smell of ozone. The aftermath was absolute silence. Lena stumbled back, her face pale, hands trembling. The other students stared, their expressions ranging from terror to awe. What was that? Demanded Ren, the boy with spatial manipulation potential, his voice uncharacteristically shaky. That wasn't mana. That was something else. Alex's heart hammered in his chest. Through Minter's gaze, he saw Lena's Void Empress manifestation tick up to 0.3%. A small increase, but monumental. He forced himself to speak calmly. That, he said, was potential. Lena, you just created a spatial rift without using any mana. Do you understand what that means? Before she could answer, the heavy doors of the training hall slammed open. 3 figures strode in, their academy robes a stark contrast to Blackwood's worn gray. These were deep crimson, trimmed with gold, marking them as students from Crimson Spire Academy, the most prestigious institution in the region. The leader was a tall boy with perfectly coiffed hair and a sneer that seemed permanently etched on his face. His nameplate glowed softly. Darian, Blade Dancer, level 15. Flanking him were 2 others, a girl with sharp features labeled Alara, Arcane Archer, level 14, and a burly boy Gareth, Stone Guardian, level 13. Well, Darian drawled, his voice dripping with condescension. We heard there was a freak show out here in the boonies, but I didn't think it'd be this pathetic. Alex stepped forward, positioning himself between his students and the newcomers. This is a private training session. You're not welcome here. Darian's eyes swept over the group, lingering on Lena's still trembling form and Kale's nervous posture. Private? Please. Everyone's talking about the useless Pedagogue and his class of rejects. We came to see if the rumors were true. He smirked. Looks like they underestimated how sad this place really is. Myra's hands clenched into fists, her knuckles turning white. Alex could feel her rage through Minter's insight, a hot, sharp thing that threatened to boil over. Get out, she snarled. Or what? Darian took a step closer, his hand resting on the hilt of the practice sword at his hip. You'll cry at me? I heard one of you can't even use mana. And you, he pointed at Kale. You're the one who supposedly messed with time? Let me guess, you slowed down breakfast so you could sleep in longer? Alara giggled, a high, mocking sound. They probably think they're special because they're broken. Alex felt the tension in the room spike. His students were shrinking back, the brief confidence from Lena's breakthrough evaporating under the weight of this blatant ridicule. All except Mira. She took a step forward, her eyes locked on Darian. You think you're better than us because you have fancy robes and a high level? She said, her voice low and dangerous. I know I am, Darian replied, his smirk widening. But since you seem to need proof, how about a little duel? One-on-one. Let's see if any of you freaks can actually put up a fight. He gestured to Gareth, who cracked his knuckles with a sound like grinding stones. I'll even go easy on you. Pick your best. Oh wait, that's like choosing the least rotten apple in a compost heap. Alex's mind raced. A duel? His students were barely beginning to understand their abilities. Kale had frozen time for a second. Lena had created an unstable rift. The others hadn't even attempted to tap into their potentials yet. They were no match for trained combat classes from Crimson Spire. We decline, Alex said firmly. We're not here to entertain you. Scared, Pedagogue? Darian taunted. Figures. Useless teacher, useless students. You know, they say your class only grows if your students achieve something. Looks like you'll be stuck at level 1 forever. The words hit Alex like a physical blow. He saw the doubt creeping back into his students' eyes. Lena looked down, shame flooding her features again. Kale shuffled backward, as if trying to melt into the wall. Then Mira spoke, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. I'll fight. Alex turned to her. Mira, no, you're not ready. Ready for what? She shot back, her eyes never leaving Darian. To get humiliated? I'm used to it. But I'm not letting this pretty boy walk out of here thinking he's won. Darian laughed. Brave words from the violent delinquent. I heard you like breaking bones. Too bad you'll be the one with broken bones today. He nodded to Gareth. Make it quick. We have real training to get back to. Gareth stepped forward, his massive frame blocking the light from the door. He was a Stone Guardian, a defensive class that could harden his skin to rock-like durability. Even without weapons, he was a formidable opponent. Mira cracked her neck, a feral grin spreading across her face. But Alex could feel the fear beneath her bravado, a cold, sharp edge to her anger. She was scared, but she was too proud to back down. The other students formed a loose circle, their expressions grim. Lena was trembling, her hands clasped tightly together. Kale watched with wide eyes, his fingers twitching as if trying to grasp something intangible. Gareth lunged, surprisingly fast for his size. Mira dodged, but barely, his fist grazing her shoulder with enough force to spin her halfway around. She recovered, launching a punch of her own. It connected with his chest with a solid thud, but Gareth didn't even flinch. His skin had taken on a gray, stony texture. Is that all? He rumbled, grabbing her arm and twisting. Mira cried out in pain, but instead of pulling away, she leaned into the hold, driving her knee into his side. Again, no effect. Gareth backhanded her, sending her sprawling across the stone floor. Blood trickled from her split lip. Alex's hands clenched at his sides. He wanted to stop this, to intervene, but something held him back. Through Minter's gaze, he saw Myra's blood lord potential, still at 0.1%, dormant. But there was a flicker, a response to the pain, to the anger. Get up, freak, Darian called, his voice bored. Or are you done already? Mira pushed herself to her hands and knees, breathing heavily. Her eyes were wild, unfocused. Then they settled on the blood dripping from her lip onto the stone. She stared at it, as if seeing it for the first time. Blood, she whispered, so softly only Alex, standing closest, heard it. Gareth advanced again, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silent hall. Time to finish this. Mira didn't move. She kept staring at the blood. Then, slowly, she raised her head. Her eyes, normally a dark brown, were now glowing with a faint red light. It was subtle at first, like embers in ash, but it grew brighter with each heartbeat. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with Lena's rift. This was different, hotter, more primal. Through Minner's gaze, he saw Myra's blood lord manifestation jump to 0.5%. The system notification flashed in the corner of his vision, but he ignored it, his attention fixed on his student. Gareth hesitated, sensing the change. What's this? A new trick? Mira stood, her movements fluid, predatory. The blood on her lip seemed to shimmer, absorbing back into her skin. The cut healed before their eyes. She smiled, and this time it held no mirth, only hunger. You like causing pain? She said, her voice layered with something deeper, older. Let me show you what pain really feels like. She didn't charge. She simply pointed a finger at Gareth. The big boy froze, his eyes widening in confusion. Then he screamed, a raw, agonized sound that tore through the hall. He clutched at his chest, stumbling backward as if struck by an invisible force. What did you do? Darian shouted, his smugness gone, replaced by alarm. Mira didn't answer. Her eyes burned brighter, the red light casting eerie shadows across her face. Gareth collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath, his stony skin fading back to normal flesh, pale and sweating. Alex watched, horror and awe warring within him. He had pushed Lena to embrace her emptiness, and she had created a rift. Now Mira, fueled by rage and pain, was tapping into something ancient and terrible. He had wanted to unlock their potential, to help them grow. But as Mira took a step toward the terrified Crimson Spire students, her hands curling into claws, Alex wondered if he had just unleashed something he could no longer control. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked courtyard of the Fallowwood Academy, but the air crackled with a tension thicker than the humidity clinging to the overgrown stone walls. Alex stood at the edge of the makeshift dueling circle, a rough oval drawn in chalk on the uneven cobblestones, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. The 3 Crimson Spire students had returned, this time with reinforcements, a dozen spectators from their academy, all wearing pristine uniforms embroidered with golden thread, and their champion, a boy named Kalen. Kalen was everything Alex's students were not. Tall, lithe, and radiating confidence, he wore the Blade Dancer, clasped like a second skin. Twin short swords hung at his hips, their hilts gleaming with enchantments that shimmered in the light. He moved with a dancer's grace as he stepped into the circle, his smirk aimed not at Mira, but at Alex. So this is the freak show's champion, he called out, his voice carrying across the silent courtyard. A girl who bleeds too much? How quaint. Mira stood opposite him, her knuckles white where she gripped a simple wooden training staff. Her face was still bruised from yesterday's scuffle with Gareth, the stone guardian, but her eyes held a simmering rage that made the air feel colder. Alex had tried to talk her out of this, had pleaded, in fact, but Mira had just stared at him, her gaze unreadable. I'm not letting them call us trash, she'd said, her voice low. Not again. Now, as the crowd of Crimson Spire students jeered, Alex felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. He glanced at his own class, huddled together near the academy's crumbling entrance. Lena, the Void Empress candidate, watched with wide, fearful eyes, her hands trembling. Leo, the lazy boy with Chronomancer potential, leaned against the wall, looking bored but with a tension in his shoulders that betrayed his concern. The others, a quiet boy Alex had pegged as a future soul weaver, a girl with Earthshaker latent in her. All looked on, their expressions a mix of hope and dread. Rules are simple, announced a Crimson Spire instructor, a stern woman with a combat assessor tag floating above her head. First to yield or be incapacitated loses. No lethal strikes. Begin. Kalen didn't wait. He exploded into motion, his blades leaving silver trails in the air as he closed the distance in a heartbeat. Mira barely raised her staff in time, deflecting a slash aimed at her throat. The impact jarred her arms, and she stumbled back, her boots scraping on the stones. Kalen pressed the advantage, his movements a blur of steel and motion. He was toying with her, Alex realized. Each strike precise, each dodge effortless, designed to humiliate rather than defeat. Come on, freak, Kalen taunted, dancing around a clumsy swing from Mira. Is that all you've got? I heard you made Gareth cry yesterday. Let's see if you can make me bleed. Mira growled, her grip tightening on the staff. She lunged, but Kalen sidestepped, his blade slicing a shallow cut across her forearm. Blood welled up, dripping onto the cobblestones. The Crimson Spire students cheered, their laughter echoing off the walls. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He wanted to intervene, to stop this before it went too far, but he knew it would only make things worse. His Pedagogue class offered no combat skills, just a growing sense of helplessness. Then, something shifted. Mira looked down at the blood on her arm, her breathing ragged. Instead of pain, her expression hardened into something feral. Alex's mentor's gaze flickered to life unbidden, overlaying her with data. Mira, Bloodlord potential, 12.7%. Latent ability. Hemokinesis, blood manipulation. Emotional catalyst, rage/pain. You like blood? Mira whispered. Her voice so low only Kalen and Alex caught it. Her eyes began to glow with a faint crimson light, the same hue Alex had seen yesterday. She didn't heal this time. Instead, the blood on her arm stopped flowing, coalescing into a thin, shimmering ribbon that wrapped around her fingers. Kalen paused, his smirk faltering for a second. What's this? A parlor trick? Mira didn't answer. She dropped the staff and charged, her movements still crude but fueled by a terrifying intensity. Kalen met her with a flurry of strikes, but Mira didn't try to block. She let a blade cut into her shoulder, gritting her teeth as more blood spilled. This time, however, the blood didn't drip. It flowed toward her hands, forming crude, jagged claws over her fists. Crude but effective, Alex muttered, his mind racing. He'd read about blood lords in the fragmented system archives, classes that thrived on pain and sacrifice, turning their own vitality into weapons. But seeing it happen, raw and uncontrolled, sent a chill down his spine. Kalen's confidence wavered as Mira swiped at him with her blood claws. They weren't as fast as his blades, but they hit with brutal force, tearing through his uniform and drawing lines of red across his chest. He yelped, stumbling back. You little, he snarled, his attacks growing reckless. Mira pressed on, ignoring the wounds that littered her body. Each cut fed her power, the blood claws growing larger, more defined. She wasn't fighting with skill. She was fighting with sheer, bloody-minded determination. When Kalen tried a spinning slash aimed at her neck, Mira ducked low and slammed a clawed fist into his stomach. The impact wasn't just physical. Alex saw a pulse of crimson energy ripple through Kalen, and the blade dancer gasped, his face paling as if the life were being drained from him. Yield, Mira hissed, her eyes now fully glowing, her voice echoing with a power that didn't seem entirely her own. Kalen tried to raise his blades, but his arms trembled. He looked at the blood seeping from his wounds, then at Mira's relentless advance. Fear flashed in his eyes, real, primal fear. I yield, he choked out, dropping his swords with a clatter. The courtyard fell silent. The Crimson Spire students stared, their jeers dead in their throats. Mira stood over Kalen, her blood claws dissipating into mist, leaving her battered but standing tall. She spat a glob of blood onto the stones near his head, then turned and walked back toward Alex's class, her steps uneven but proud. Alex let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Then, the system notifications flooded his vision, golden text scrolling rapidly. System alert, student breakthrough detected. Mira, Bloodlord potential increased to 18.3%. New ability unlocked, Sanguine Grasp. Mentor rewards asterisk. +5 to wisdom. +3 to charisma. Skill enhanced, Mentor's gaze, now includes brief combat analysis. Class experience, Pedagogue, level 2 achieved. A warmth spread through Alex, a tangible surge of power that made his senses sharpen. He could see more details in the courtyard, the individual cracks in the stones, the subtle shifts in his students' postures. It was intoxicating, but the feeling was short-lived. What is the meaning of this? The voice cut through the silence, cold and authoritative. A man strode into the courtyard, flanked by 2 armored guards. He wore robes of deep crimson, embroidered with intricate patterns that marked him as the Dean of Crimson Spire Academy. His name floated above him, Dean Alistair Thorne, Arcane Chancellor. His face was a mask of controlled fury as he looked at Kalen, still kneeling on the ground, then at Mira, and finally at Alex. "You," Thorn said, pointing a finger at Alex. "You are the pedagogue in charge of this disgrace?" Alex stepped forward, forcing his voice to remain steady. "Dean Thorn." The duel was agreed upon by both parties. "Your student yielded." Yielded? Thorn's laugh was brittle. "He was assaulted with unsanctioned, barbaric magic. Do you have any idea what you're teaching here? These abominations." He gestured at Alex's class, his lip curling in disgust. Fallowwood Academy was meant to be a holding pen for the system's rejects, not a breeding ground for monsters. Alex felt a flare of anger, hot and sudden. They're students, not monsters. And they won fairly. Fairly. Thorn's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "I've received reports of irregular power spikes from this location. A mana-devoid girl causing spatial rifts, a brute healing from fatal wounds, and now this, blood manipulation? These are not normal class evolutions. They are anomalies. And anomalies are a threat to the system's balance." He took a step closer, his guards moving to flank him. "I will be filing a formal complaint with the System Oversight Committee. Your academy's funding, what little there is, will be revoked. Your students will be transferred to proper facilities for evaluation." His eyes lingered on Mira and Lena, and Alex saw the greed in them, thinly veiled as concern. "And you, Pedagogue, will be stripped of your class and reassigned to waste management, where you belong." The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Alex's students shifted nervously, their earlier triumph evaporating. Leo pushed off the wall, his lazy demeanor gone, replaced by a sharp alertness. Lena trembled, her hands clasped together as if praying. Mira just glared, her fists clenching again, fresh blood welling where her nails dug into her palms. Alex met Thorn's gaze, his mind racing. The stat boost from the system hummed under his skin, a reminder of what was at stake. He wasn't just a teacher anymore. He was the architect of these kids' potential, and that potential was drawing eyes that wanted to crush it or exploit it. "We'll see what the committee says," he said, his voice quieter now, but with a steel he didn't know he possessed. "But my students aren't going anywhere." Thorn's smile was thin and cruel. "Brave words for a useless class. Mark my words, Pedagogue, this victory of yours will be your downfall. Success draws attention, and attention in this world is a dangerous thing." He turned on his heel, his robes swirling. "Clean up your freak." He tossed over his shoulder at Kalen, who scrambled to his feet, shamefaced. The Crimson Spire entourage retreated, their earlier arrogance replaced by a sullen silence. As they disappeared beyond the academy gates, the tension in the courtyard broke, leaving behind a hollow exhaustion. Alex looked at his students, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear and uncertainty. Mira slumped against the wall, the adrenaline fading, her wounds beginning to ache. Leo helped her sit, his usual laziness replaced by a focused concern. "Teacher," Lena whispered, stepping forward. "What do we do now?" Alex didn't have an answer. He looked at the bloodstains on the cobblestones, at the chalk circle now smeared and broken. The system notifications still glowed in his peripheral vision, a taunting reminder of the power he was gaining, and the price it came with. Dean Thorn's words echoed in his mind. Success draws attention. He had thought his pedagogue class was a curse, a joke in a world of warriors. But now, as he saw the flickers of world-shaking potential in each of his students, he realized the truth. He wasn't useless. He was dangerous, because he could unlock what others feared. And in a system apocalypse where the strong ruled, being dangerous was the only thing that mattered. "We keep going," Alex said at last, his voice firm. "We train. We get stronger. Because if we don't," he trailed off, looking at the gates where Thorn had vanished. The message was clear. Their sanctuary was no longer safe. The duel had been more than a fight. It had been a declaration of war, and Alex had just drawn the first blood, in more ways than one. The sun climbed higher, baking the courtyard, but a cold dread settled in Alex's bones. He had unleashed something today, and he knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the core, that he could never put it back in the box. The morning after Dean Thorn's threat hung like a pall over Fallowwood Academy, Alex gathered his students in the dilapidated training yard. The air was thick with tension, the memory of Myra's bloody victory and the dean's cold warning still fresh in everyone's minds. "We can't stay here," Alex said, his voice carrying a new weight. The system notifications from yesterday's duel still glowed in his vision. His Pedagogue class had jumped to level 3, granting him increased wisdom and a new skill, Guiding Hand, which subtly enhanced his students' focus. But the rewards felt hollow against the threat of losing everything. "Thorn will make good on his promise to shut us down. We need to prove we're not just dangerous anomalies. We're capable, controlled assets to the system." Lena, the quiet girl with the Void Empress potential, shifted uncomfortably. Her mana-devoid label had always made her an outcast, but now, with Alex's revelation of her true class, she carried a different kind of burden. "How?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They think we're freaks." "By doing what every other academy does," Alex replied, pulling up a holographic map from his system interface. It flickered with static. Fallowwood's ancient tech was barely functional. "We go on a dungeon dive. There's a low-level ruin nearby, the Sunken Crypt. It's rated safe for beginners, mostly cleared of major threats. If we complete it, document our success, and bring back loot, it might buy us some time with the system authorities." Kale, the lazy Chronomancer candidate, groaned from where he was slumped against a crumbling wall. "Dungeons? Seriously? I was hoping for a nap. Time manipulation is exhausting, you know." His casual demeanor belied the flicker of fear in his eyes. Yesterday, he'd accidentally frozen time for a second during training, and the strain had left him pale and trembling. Mira, still sporting bandages from her duel, cracked her knuckles. A faint red glow lingered in her irises, a remnant of her blood lord awakening. "I'm in. Anything's better than sitting here waiting for Thorn's goons to drag us away." The other students, a mix of hidden potentials like Tara the nascent earthshaker and Jean the shadowed illusionist, nodded in agreement, their expressions ranging from nervous to determined. Alex felt a surge of pride mixed with anxiety. Through Minter's gaze, he could see their true classes shimmering beneath the surface. Lena's void energy coiled like a sleeping serpent, Kale's temporal threads weaving lazily around him, Myra's blood resonance pulsing with latent fury. They were diamonds in the rough, and he was the only one who could see their brilliance. But with that sight came responsibility and danger. The Sunken Crypt lay an hour's hike from the academy, buried in a mist-shrouded valley. The entrance was a gaping maw of moss-covered stone, long ago stripped of its treasures by adventurers. System warnings flickered at the periphery. Area, Sunken Crypt. Threat level, low. Recommended party, 3 to 5 level 1 to 3 combatants. Alex's party of 6, himself and 5 students, was overkill on paper, but he knew better than to trust system assessments entirely. "Stay close," Alex instructed, igniting a glowstone from his pack. The pale light revealed a descending staircase, slick with damp. The air grew cold and heavy, smelling of decay and old magic. "Lena, take point with me. Your void sensitivity might detect hidden traps. Kale, keep an eye on our rear. Mira, Tara, Jean, flank positions." They moved in silence, the only sounds their footsteps and the distant drip of water. The crypt's walls were carved with faded runes, remnants of a pre-system civilization. Alex's, Minter's gaze, activated passively, highlighting weak points in the structure and the faint energy signatures of long-dead wards. He noted how Lena's eyes darted nervously, her hands trembling. She'd been labeled mana-devoid her whole life, taught that she was broken, worthless. Now, Alex had told her she was a Void Empress in waiting. The cognitive dissonance was palpable. "Teacher," Lena whispered suddenly, stopping. "There's something wrong with the air here. It's not just empty. It's hungry." Before Alex could respond, a guttural growl echoed from the darkness ahead. 3 creatures emerged from side passages, mutated cave rats, each the size of a large dog, their fur matted with glowing fungus, eyes burning with feral intelligence. System alert. Mutated scavengers detected. Level 2. Weak to fire and light. "Form up," Alex barked, falling back on his limited combat training. He was no fighter. His stats were skewed toward intelligence and charisma, but he could direct. "Tara, use your earth affinity to trip them. Jean, illusions to confuse. Mira, be ready to engage." Tara, A stocky girl with calloused hands slammed her palms against the stone floor. A ripple of energy shot forward, cracking the ground beneath the lead rat. It stumbled, snarling. Gene, a wiry boy with sharp features, wove his hands through the air, creating phantom duplicates of the party that darted in and out of the shadows. The rats hesitated, confused, but they were fast. One broke through, lunging at Lena with dripping fangs. She froze, panic locking her limbs, old instincts screaming that she had no magic to defend herself. "Kale now," Alex shouted. Kale sighed, as if inconvenienced, but his eyes snapped with concentration. He raised a hand, fingers twitching. Fine, fine. Temporal snare. The world stuttered. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The rat mid-leap, droplets of saliva hanging in the air. The party's movements halted. Alex felt the strain in the air, a pressure against his senses. Then time resumed, but the rat was slowed, moving through molasses. Mira didn't need another cue. She dashed forward, her blood-enhanced speed a blur, and drove a fist wrapped in crimson energy into the creature's side. It crumpled with a sickening crunch. The other two rats fell quickly to coordinated strikes, Tara pinning one with a stone spike, Jean making the other attack its own reflection until Mira finished it. As the last rat dissipated into system particles, leaving behind a few copper coins and a lump of glowing fungus, Kale collapsed to his knees, panting heavily. Sweat soaked his tunic. "Told you exhausting," he gasped. Alex rushed to his side, checking his vitals. Minter's gaze showed Kale's temporal threads frayed, his stamina drained to near zero. "You pushed too hard. That was more than a second's freeze." "Had to," Kale muttered, wiping his brow. Lena was going to get bitten. Not exactly. Teacher of the Year material, if I let that happen. Lena helped him up, her expression guilty. "I'm sorry. I panicked." "Don't be," Alex said firmly. "This is why we're here, to learn control. You all did well. But we need to be careful. Kale, conserve your energy. We don't know what's deeper in." They pressed on, the crypt opening into a larger chamber. A burial vault with sarcophagi lining the walls, long since looted. In the center stood a crumbling altar, atop which rested a faintly pulsing crystal. System alert, minor mana core detected. Low-grade loot. Safe for retrieval. "That's our proof," Alex said, pointing. "If we bring that back, it shows we can handle sanctioned dungeons. Lena, you're most attuned to energy voids. Check for traps." Lena approached cautiously, her senses extended. As she neared the altar, the air around her shimmered. "It's pulling at me," she said, her voice strained. "Like the void is whispering." "Just grab the core and let's go," Mira urged, scanning the shadows. But as Lena's fingers brushed the crystal, something snapped. Not a trap, but a resonance. Her mana-devoid body, a perfect vacuum, reacted with the latent void energies in the crypt. A tear ripped open in reality behind the altar, a jagged portal of absolute blackness, from which cold, silent whispers poured forth. "Lena, back away!" Alex yelled, but it was too late. From the portal, a shadow creature emerged. It had no distinct form, just a shifting mass of darkness with two pinpricks of violet light for eyes. System alert, anomaly detected. Void spawn. Threat level, unknown. Error, entity not in dungeon registry. The creature moved with eerie silence, flowing toward Lena. She stumbled back, terror in her eyes. "I didn't mean to. It just opened. Everyone retreat." Alex ordered, his mind racing. This wasn't in the outline. This wasn't safe. Minter's gaze showed him the creature's nature. It was a scout, drawn to Lena's nascent void affinity, a fragment of a larger realm. Fighting it here, in close quarters, with exhausted students, was suicide. Mira charged forward, blood claws forming, but her strikes passed through the shadow like mist. Tara's earth attacks did nothing. Jin's illusions were ignored. The creature focused solely on Lena, reaching for her with tendrils of darkness. Kale, still pale, gritted his teeth. One more, for the road. He focused, veins standing out on his temples. Time crawl. The shadow creature slowed, but not as much as the rats had. Kale cried out, blood trickling from his nose, but he held the effect. "Run?" Now, Alex didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lena's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "Mira, Tara, Jean, cover us. Don't engage, just delay." They fled, the shadow creature pursuing with relentless intent. Kale's time manipulation gave them a precious lead, but as they burst out of the crypt into the afternoon light, he collapsed, unconscious. Alex caught him, slinging him over a shoulder. The creature emerged from the entrance, pausing at the threshold of sunlight. It didn't cross, but its violet eyes locked onto Lena, burning with alien intelligence. Then, as if remembering something, it dissolved into shadows, seeping into the ground and vanishing. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were their ragged breaths and the distant call of birds. Then system notifications flooded Alex's vision, bright and overwhelming. Student breakthrough detected. Lena, Void Empress, has initiated Void resonance. Reward, Mentor EXP plus 500. Student breakthrough detected. Kale, Chronomancer, has performed sustained temporal manipulation under duress. Reward, Mentor EXP plus 300, Wisdom plus 2. Party survival, successful retreat from anomalous threat. Reward, Pedagogue level up 4. New skill unlocked. Emergency lesson, temporarily boost a student's primary stat in crisis. Loot retrieved, minor mana core 1. Additional rewards, gold plus 50, reputation with Fallowwood Academy plus 10. Alex's stats surged, his body humming with new power, but the feeling was bitter. He looked at his students, Lena shaking, Kale unconscious, the others wide-eyed with shock. They had survived, even profited, but at what cost? As they began the slow trek back to the academy, Lena whispered, "It's still watching. I can feel it." In the shadows. Alex followed her gaze to the edge of the forest, where the twilight deepened. For a second, he thought he saw 2 violet pinpricks glowing from beneath a gnarled root, fixed unerringly on Lena. Then they were gone. The dungeon dive had proven their capability, but it had also unleashed something. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Alex knew the real threat wasn't Dean Thorne or the system's bureaucracy. It was whatever lurked in the void, and it had just found its quarry. The moon hung like a pale sickle over the crumbling spires of the Fallowwood Academy, casting long shadows that seemed to writhe with a life of their own. In his small quarters, Alex lay awake, the system notifications from the dungeon dive still flashing behind his eyelids. His stats had surged. Wisdom, up by 5, Perception, by 3, Mentor's Influence, now at level 2. But the numbers felt hollow against the memory of that shadow creature's gaze fixed on Lena. He'd spent the evening checking on his students. Kale, the would-be Chronomancer, was still unconscious in the infirmary, his breathing shallow but steady. Lena had retreated to her dormitory, her usual quiet demeanor replaced by a tense silence that seemed to vibrate with unspoken fear. The others, Mira with her nascent blood lord potential, Jax the Earthshaker, and the rest, had dispersed with muttered worries and sidelong glances at the deepening night. Alex rose from his cot, the floorboards creaking under his bare feet. He moved to the window, looking out over the academy's central courtyard. The training dummies stood like silent sentinels, their straw stuffing leaking from wounds inflicted during yesterday's chaotic practice. Something felt wrong. The air tasted metallic, like ozone before a storm, and the shadows in the corners of the yard seemed darker than they should be, swallowing the moonlight rather than reflecting it. He was about to turn away when he saw it. A ripple in the darkness near the girls' dormitory. Not a movement, but an absence of movement, a patch of night that flowed against the wind. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He fumbled for his glasses, activating Mentor's gaze, almost instinctively. The world shifted into layers of potential and reality. The academy buildings glowed with faint residual mana from decades of failed spellcasting classes. His students' dormitories pulsed with brighter lights. Kale's a flickering silver thread even in his sleep, Myra's a deep crimson simmer. And Lena's room was a vortex. Where the others showed potential, hers was a gaping maw of absolute darkness, a void that seemed to suck the light from the very air around it. And flowing toward that vortex was a stream of shadow, coalescing from the courtyard into a familiar, nightmare shape. The creature from the sunken crypt, grown larger, more defined, with eyes that burned with cold violet fire. No, Alex breathed. He was moving before the thought fully formed, yanking on his boots and throwing open his door. The hallway outside was deserted, The other teachers long since retired to their quarters with dismissive snorts about that Pedagogue's freak show. Alex's feet pounded on the worn stone floors, his breath coming in sharp gasps. He had no combat skills, no spells to cast, just the desperate certainty that his students were in danger. As he burst into the courtyard, the shadow creature turned its head. Its form was more solid now, a thing of shifting darkness with two many-jointed limbs and a mouth that opened on nothingness. It ignored Alex completely, its focus entirely on the girls' dormitory, on Lena's room on the second floor. "Hey!" Alex shouted, his voice cracking. "Over here." The creature didn't even glance his way. It began to climb the dormitory wall, shadows flowing like liquid up the stonework, leaving frost in its wake. Alex's mind raced. He couldn't fight it. But his students? He turned and sprinted toward the boys' dormitory, throwing open the door with enough force to slam it against the wall. "Mira, Jax, everyone up. Now." Mira tumbled out of her room, hair wild, eyes still bleary with sleep. "Teacher? What's—" "The creature from the dungeon," Alex gasped. "It's here. It's going for Lena." Myra's sleepiness vanished, replaced by a feral sharpness. She didn't ask questions, just turned and banged on doors. "Up! Weapons! Now!" Within minutes, the students were gathered in the courtyard, all except Kale, still unconscious, and Lena, unaware in her room. There were 7 of them. Mira with a training sword she'd stolen from the armory, Jax with his massive fists clenched, the others armed with whatever they'd grabbed, a chair leg, a fire poker, sheer desperation. Alex looked at their faces, pale in the moonlight. They were scared. But beneath the fear, he saw something else, a spark of defiance, of loyalty to the only teacher who'd ever seen them as more than failures. "Listen to me," Alex said, his voice low and urgent. "That thing up there wants Lena. I don't know why, but her void affinity calls to it. We have to stop it before it reaches her room." "How?" Jax rumbled. "We're not fighters. We're the Academy's rejects." "You're more than that," Alex said, meeting each of their eyes. "Mira, you felt the blood singing in your veins when you're angry. Jax, you've made the ground tremble without meaning to. All of you have power you haven't learned to control yet. Tonight, you don't have a choice. Control it or die." He pointed up at the dormitory. The shadow creature was halfway up the wall now, its form oozing over a windowsill where a first-year girl screamed and slammed her shutters. "Mira, you're with me," Alex said. "We take the stairs, try to intercept it on the second floor. Jax, you and the others create a distraction down here. Throw rocks, shout, do anything to draw its attention." "It didn't even look at teacher before," Mira said, her knuckles white on her sword hilt. "It will look at you," Alex said. "Because you're not just noise. You're a threat. Or you will be." He didn't wait for agreement, just turned and ran for the dormitory entrance, Mira at his heels. Behind them, Jax let out a roar that shook the courtyard, picking up a loose cobblestone and hurling it at the creature. It missed by feet, but the creature paused, one limb twitching in their direction. Inside the dormitory, the hallway was chaos. Girls in nightclothes crowded doorways, whispering and pointing. Alex pushed through them, his heart in his throat. "Stay in your rooms. Lock the doors." He reached the stairs and took them 2 at a time, his lungs burning. Mira kept pace, her breathing steady, her eyes fixed ahead with a focus Alex had never seen in her before. On the second-floor landing, they skidded to a halt. The shadow creature was at the far end of the hallway, outside Lena's door. It had grown again, now nearly filling the corridor from floor to ceiling, its form shifting and pulsing. The air temperature had dropped sharply. Alex could see his breath fogging in the moonlight from a window. Lena's door was open. She stood in the doorway, dressed in a simple nightgown, her face pale but calm. She was looking at the creature, and in her eyes, Alex saw not fear, but recognition. "It's from the void," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's lonely. Lena, get back." Alex shouted. The creature reached for her, a limb of pure darkness extending slowly, almost tenderly. And then time stuttered. Alex felt the world slow, the dust motes in the moonlight freezing in place, the creature's movement becoming a glacial creep. From the stairwell behind them, Kale stumbled onto the landing, one hand braced against the wall, his face drawn with exhaustion, but his eyes blazing with silver light. "I Felt it, Kale gasped. The void, pulling. He raised his other hand, fingers trembling. The slowing effect intensified. The creature's limbs stopped moving entirely, suspended inches from Lena's face. I can't hold it long, Kale whispered. Too tired. Mira didn't hesitate. She charged down the hallway, her training sword held high. As she moved, Alex saw it. A faint crimson aura flickering around her, like heat haze on a summer road. Her muscles corded, her speed increasing beyond human normal. She brought the sword down on the creature's extended limb. The blade passed through shadow as if through smoke, but the creature recoiled, a soundless shiver running through its form. It turned its attention from Lena to Mira, those violet eyes burning with sudden interest. Mira, fall back, Alex yelled, but Mira stood her ground, planting herself between the creature and Lena. Not today, you shadowy bastard, she snarled. The creature struck, a whip-fast lash of darkness. Mira parried with the sword, but the impact sent her skidding back, her boots scraping on the stone floor. The crimson aura around her flared brighter. Jax, Alex shouted down the stairs. Now, from below, a thunderous crash shook the building. Jax and the others had apparently found something heavy to throw. The distraction worked. The creature's head twitched toward the sound, giving Mira an opening. She lunged, not at the creature's body, but at the space around Lena. Lena, whatever you did in the dungeon, do it again. Open a portal. Send it back. Lena shook her head, her hands clenched at her sides. I can't control it. It just happens. Make it happen. Mira ducked another strike, the shadow passing so close it left a streak of frost in her hair. Alex watched, helpless, his mind racing. Minter's gaze showed him the flows of power, Kale's time manipulation a straining silver net, Myra's blood-enhanced strength a pulsing red tide, Lena's void potential a swirling darkness that seemed to resonate with the creature itself. They were pieces of a puzzle, but they didn't fit together. And then he understood. Lena, he called, his voice cutting through the chaos. The creature isn't attacking you. It's drawn to your void affinity. It thinks you're part of it. Lena's eyes widened. What? Embrace it. Alex took a step forward, ignoring the danger. You've been fighting your nature because everyone told you mana-devoid means worthless. But it doesn't. It means you're something else entirely. That creature is from the void. You are becoming the void. Show it who's in charge. For a long moment, Lena just stared at him. Then, slowly, she unclenched her hands. She took a deep breath and let it out in a sigh that seemed to suck the sound from the hallway. The temperature dropped again, so cold Alex's teeth ached. The shadows in the corridor deepened, flowing toward Lena like iron filings to a magnet. Her nightgown began to flutter in a wind that wasn't there, her hair lifting around her face. In her eyes, the reflection of the moonlight vanished, replaced by twin pools of absolute blackness. The creature froze, its attention wholly on Lena now. It didn't attack. It waited. Lena raised a hand. The darkness around her coalesced into a swirling vortex above her palm, a miniature version of the portal she'd opened in the dungeon. But this time, it was controlled, deliberate. The vortex grew, spinning faster, pulling at the very light in the hallway. Go back, Lena said, her voice echoing with layers not her own. You do not belong here. She thrust her hand forward. The vortex shot toward the creature, expanding as it went. The shadow creature didn't resist. It flowed into the vortex, its form unraveling into strands of darkness that were sucked into the spinning void. For a second, Alex saw those violet eyes fixed on Lena one last time, not with malice, but with something like gratitude, and then they were gone. The vortex snapped shut with a sound like a thunderclap in reverse. The sudden silence was deafening. Lena swayed on her feet. Alex caught her before she could fall, lowering her gently to the floor. Her eyes had returned to normal, but they were wide with shock. I did it, she whispered. You did, Alex said, his own hands trembling. You all did. He looked around. Kale had slumped against the wall, unconscious again but breathing steadily. Mira leaned on her sword, the crimson aura fading from around her, leaving her looking exhausted but triumphant. From downstairs, Jax's voice called up, Did we win? Before Alex could answer, the system notifications flooded his vision, brighter and more urgent than ever before. Student breakthrough detected, Lena Vance. Hidden class unlocked. Void Empress, nascent. Student breakthrough detected, Mira Thorn. Hidden class progress, Blood Lord awakening. Student breakthrough detected, Kale Ren. Hidden class progress, Chronomancer, stabilizing. Teamwork milestone achieved. First coordinated defense. Mentor rewards calculating. Alex's own status shimmered. His wisdom jumped by 8 points. Perception by 5. Mentor's influence leveled up to 3. New notifications appeared. Class feature unlocked. Mentor's aura slightly boosts all stats of students within 50 feet when actively teaching or leading. Level up, Pedagogue level 4 dash level 7. Title earned, Keeper of Hidden Flames. He dismissed the screens, his attention on his students. They were gathering around, helping Kale up, checking on Lena. They looked different, not just tired, but changed. There was a new confidence in their eyes, a sense of belonging to something larger than their individual failures. Alex was about to speak when a new notification appeared, this one not in his personal interface, but projected into the air before all of them in glowing system script. It pulsed with an urgent golden light, and a mechanical voice echoed through the academy grounds, audible in every room, every hallway. System-wide alert. Anomaly detected in remote academy, Fallowwood. Power spike irregularities registered. Investigation initiated. Estimated arrival of system enforcers, 48 hours. All personnel advised to cooperate fully. The message hung in the air for a long moment before fading. In the silence that followed, Alex looked at his students' faces, seeing their hard-won confidence waver, replaced by a dawning fear. Teacher, Mira asked, her voice small. What does that mean? Alex rose to his feet, helping Lena up as he did. He met their eyes, one by one, and forced a calm he didn't feel into his voice. It means, he said quietly, that we've just drawn the attention of the very people who think classes like ours shouldn't exist. And we have 2 days to figure out what we're going to tell them. Outside, the first hints of dawn tinged the sky with gray. But in the hallway, the shadows seemed deeper than ever, and Alex knew the night's battle was only the beginning. The morning after the shadow creature's attack dawned with an unnatural stillness. Alex stood at the window of his modest quarters, watching the first pale light creep across the academy's courtyard. The cobblestones still bore scorch marks from Lena's void energy, and the air carried the faint, ozone-like scent of displaced reality. He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the system notification burning behind his eyelids. Anomaly detected in remote academy. Investigation initiated. ETA, 48 hours. Now, with only 6 hours remaining until the enforcer's arrival, anxiety coiled in his stomach like a living thing. His students were gathered in the main hall below, their usual morning training abandoned. Through the thin floorboards, he could hear the low murmur of their voices, tense, fractured conversations that spoke of shared dread. Alex descended the worn wooden staircase, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The academy's main hall had once been grand, with vaulted ceilings and stained glass windows depicting heroic battles from before the system apocalypse. Now, the windows were cracked, the colors faded to dull ghosts of their former brilliance. Dust motes danced in shafts of weak sunlight, and the air smelled of old books and damp stone. His students turned as he entered. Kale leaned against a pillar, his usual lazy posture replaced by rigid alertness. His fingers tapped in irregular rhythm against his thigh, a nervous tick Alex had never seen before. Mira stood near the fireplace, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The violent energy she displayed during the shadow creature attack was gone, replaced by a watchful stillness that was somehow more unsettling. Lena sat on a bench by the window, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. Her hands rested in her lap, palms upturned as if waiting for something to fall from the sky. They'll be here soon, Alex said, his voice cutting through the silence. He didn't need to specify who they were. What do they want? Mira asked, her voice flat. We killed the thing. Shouldn't that be enough? It's not about the creature, Alex said, moving to stand before them. It's about the power spikes. The system registered our breakthroughs as anomalies, irregular energy signatures that don't match our registered classes. Kale pushed away from the pillar. So they're coming to check if we're cheating? Using forbidden artifacts or something. Something like that. Alex ran a hand through his hair. System enforcers are the law in this new world. They investigate anything that threatens system stability. And right now, we look like a threat. Lena turned from the window. Her eyes, usually so distant, were sharp with focus. During the attack, when I touched the void, I heard whispers. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. What kind of whispers? Not words. Not exactly. She frowned, searching for the right description. More like impressions. A presence watching. Something ancient and hungry that noticed when I opened the gateway. Before Alex could respond, a deep, resonant chime echoed through the academy. 3 notes that seemed to vibrate in the bones rather than the air. The system alert. They were here. Remember, Alex said quickly, his voice low and urgent. Your registered classes are what matters. Kale, you're a time apprentice. Mira, combat initiate. Lena, mana deprived. Nothing more. No matter what they do or say, you stick to those classifications. He activated Mentor's gaze, almost reflexively. The world shifted into layers of potential. Kale's chronomantic energy coiled like a sleeping dragon, Myra's blood-based power pulsing in time with her heartbeat, Lena's void essence swirling in a silent maelstrom. But overlaid on all of it was a shimmering veil, a subtle manipulation of perception that Alex now recognized as his class's secondary effect. Mentor's gaze didn't just reveal truth, it could conceal it, wrapping his students' true natures in a cloak of mundane appearance. The main door swung open without anyone touching them. 3 figures stood silhouetted against the morning light. They wore identical uniforms of gray and silver, form-fitting armor that seemed to drink the light rather than reflect it. At their hips hung devices Alex recognized from system lore, reality scanners, capable of detecting energy signatures down to the quantum level. The lead enforcer stepped forward, her boots making no sound on the stone floor. Alexander Vance. Her voice was neutral, devoid of inflection. Registered class, Pedagogue, head instructor of this facility. That's me, Alex said, stepping forward. He kept his posture relaxed, his hands visible. You're the system enforcers. Designation, Enforcer Prime Seraphina, she said. Her eyes, pale blue and unervingly direct, swept over the students. These are your charges? My students, yes. Seraphina's gaze lingered on each of them. Alex felt the pressure of her attention like a physical weight. Behind her, the other 2 enforcers, a tall man with close-cropped hair and a woman with scarred knuckles, activated their scanners. Beams of pale light swept across the room, painting the air in geometric patterns. We're here to investigate anomalous energy readings from last night's incident, Seraphina said. The system registered multiple class evolution events and power spikes exceeding standard parameters by 800%. Kale shifted uncomfortably. Myra's jaw tightened. Lena simply watched, her expression unreadable. We were attacked, Alex said, keeping his voice steady. A shadow creature from the sunken crypt. My students defended themselves. Adrenaline, desperation, it can trigger unexpected breakthroughs. Unexpected, Seraphina repeated, the word hanging in the air. Not impossible. She gestured, and the male enforcer stepped forward with his scanner. We'll need to examine each student individually. Standard procedure. Alex nodded, though every instinct screamed to put himself between the enforcers and his students. Of course, whatever you need. Kale went first. The enforcer directed him to stand in the center of the room while the scanner passed over him from head to toe. Alex watched through Mentor's gaze, seeing the scanner's energy as a web of crystalline light that sought to penetrate Kale's temporal field. But where it should have revealed the chronomantic potential, it encountered the subtle distortion of Alex's concealment effect. The scanner readings flickered, stabilized, showed only the faint energy signature of a low-tier time apprentice. No anomalies, the enforcer reported, his voice bored. Minor time manipulation aptitude. Within expected parameters for registered class. Seraphina's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded. Next, Mira stood stiffly as the scanner passed over her. Alex saw her blood-based energy reacting instinctively to the intrusion, a defensive pulse that should have lit up the scanner like a beacon. But again, Mentor's gaze intervened, smoothing the energy signature into the predictable pattern of a combat initiate. The scanner beeped once, twice. Enhanced physical capabilities, the enforcer said. but consistent with combat class development. No hidden affinities detected. Now it was Lena's turn. She walked to the center of the room with that unnerving calm that had become her default state since the attack. The scanner activated, and Alex held his breath. Lena's void essence was the most volatile, the most alien of all their powers. If anything would trigger the scanners. The beam passed over her. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the scanner emitted a series of rapid clicks, and the enforcer frowned. Reading is unusual. Serafina stepped closer. Explain. Energy signature shows complete mana deprivation, as registered. But there are gaps in the scan, like something's absorbing the diagnostic beams. Mana deprivation can create null zones, Alex said quickly. It's a documented phenomenon. The absence of mana sometimes registers as anomalous because most scanners are calibrated to detect presence, not absence. Serafina studied Lena for a long moment. Lena met her gaze without flinching, her hands still at her sides. Alex saw the void energy swirling beneath the surface, held in check by sheer willpower. Plausible, Serafina said at last. She turned to Alex. Now you, Instructor Vance. Alex forced himself to remain still as the scanner passed over him. This was the moment of greatest risk. If they detected Minter's gaze itself, if they realized he was actively manipulating their perceptions. The scanner hummed. The enforcer's expression didn't change. Class, Pedagogue, no combat abilities detected. Minor stat increases consistent with teaching achievements. Nothing outside parameters. Serafina's lips thinned. She paced slowly around the room, her boots silent on the stone. 3 students. 1 instructor. All registered as low-tier or non-combat classes. Yet last night, you defeated a void-touched entity classified as a Tier 3 threat. We got lucky, Mira said, the words bursting out of her. We worked together. Used the environment. Luck, Serafina repeated. She stopped before Alex. The system doesn't believe in luck, Instructor Vance. It believes in data. And the data says what happened here last night should have been impossible. Alex met her gaze. Sometimes the impossible happens. That's why we have a system to document the exceptions. For a long moment, they stood in silence. The other enforcers completed their scans of the academy grounds, returning with identical reports. No hidden artifacts, no forbidden energy sources, no evidence of system manipulation. Finally, Serafina nodded. Our investigation is complete. For now. She turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Without looking back, she said, the system watches all, Instructor Vance. Remember that. Then they were gone, the doors swinging shut behind them as silently as they had opened. The tension in the room didn't break so much as fracture into jagged pieces. Kale slumped against the pillar, letting out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours. Mira uncrossed her arms, her hands trembling slightly. Lena remained where she was, her gaze distant again. They bought it, Kale said, his voice shaky with relief. They actually bought it. For now, Alex said. He walked to the window, watching as the enforcer's transport, a sleek, silver craft that hovered just above the ground, glided away from the academy. But they're not satisfied. Serafina knows something's off. Mira joined him at the window. What happens if they come back? They will, Lena said softly. They both turned to look at her. She had finally moved from the center of the room, coming to stand near the fireplace. The weak morning light caught the edges of her profile, making her seem both present and impossibly far away. During the scan, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. When the beam passed over me, I heard them again. The whispers. Alex felt cold fingers trace down his spine. The void entities? Lena nodded. They're not just watching. They're interested. The enforcer's technology, their presence, it stirred something. Like ringing a bell in deep water. Kale pushed away from the pillar. What does that mean? It means we're not just hiding from the system, Lena said. She turned to face them fully, and for the first time, Alex saw real fear in her eyes. Not the abstract anxiety of being discovered, but the primal terror of prey sensing a predator. Something is coming for us, teacher. Something old. And it's not just watching anymore. Her words hung in the air, heavier than the enforcer's threats, more final than any system alert. Alex looked at his students. Kale with his time manipulation that could rewrite moments. Mira with her blood-based power that defied conventional limits. Lena with her connection to a realm beyond reality itself. They were miracles. They were disasters waiting to happen. And he was the one who had set them on this path. Then we prepare, Alex said, his voice firm despite the dread coiling in his gut. Whatever's coming, we face it together. But first, we need to understand what we're dealing with. He activated Minter's gaze, again, not to conceal, but to observe. The energy signatures of his students glowed brighter than ever, their potential unfolding like dark flowers. And overlaying it all, he saw something new. Faint traceries of attention, like spiderwebs of awareness stretching from Lena's void-touched essence out into somewhere else. Somewhere the system scanners couldn't reach. The enforcers were gone. The immediate threat had passed. But as Alex looked at Lena's frightened face, heard the tremor in her voice when she spoke of the whispers, he knew with cold certainty that the real danger was just beginning. Outside, the morning light grew stronger, but it brought no warmth. Only the slow, inevitable approach of something that had been sleeping for a very long time, and was now very, very awake. The morning after the system enforcers departed, a palpable tension hung over the dilapidated academy grounds. Alex stood at the window of his cramped office, watching as his students gathered in the courtyard below. Lena, the would-be Void Empress, sat apart from the others, her gaze distant as she traced patterns in the dirt with a stick. Kale, the lazy Chronomancer, was sprawled on a bench, seemingly asleep, but with one eye cracked open, watching everything. Marcus, the violent troublemaker with blood lord potential, paced like a caged animal, his knuckles white where they gripped the edge of a broken training dummy. Alex's own nerves were frayed. Lena's warning, "Something is coming for us, teacher," echoed in his mind, mingling with the enforcer's cryptic message. The system was watching. Something ancient was stirring. And here they were, a teacher with a useless class and a handful of students who were supposed to be failures, hiding world-shaking power beneath the surface. A chime sounded from the Academy's sole functioning communication crystal, mounted on the wall. Alex turned, frowning. The crystal glowed with a soft blue light, projecting a holographic announcement into the room. Bold, golden letters scrolled through the air. System-wide notification, Grand Academia Tournament. Location, Central Arena, Capital City. Rewards, rare artifacts, skill tomes, system credits, and sponsorship opportunities. Registration open to all accredited academies. Alex's breath caught. A tournament. A chance to prove his students' worth in a controlled, public setting, far from the shadowy threats and system scrutiny. He leaned closer, reading the details. The tournament was structured in team brackets, with divisions based on academy ranking. Their failing academy, Haven's End, was in the lowest tier, but that didn't matter. The rewards. Rare artifacts could accelerate their growth. System credits could buy supplies they desperately needed. And sponsorship? That could mean protection, resources, a way to shield them from whatever was coming. He made his decision quickly, gathering his students in the main hall, a room with cracked walls and a ceiling that leaked when it rained. Alex projected the announcement for them to see. "We're entering," he said, his voice firm despite the uncertainty gnawing at him. Marcus snorted. "A tournament? We'll get crushed. The other academies have real fighters. We're just freaks." Lena interrupted softly, her eyes lifting from the floor. "That's what they call us. But teacher sees something else." Kale yawned, stretching. "Sounds like work. Do we have to?" Alex met each of their gazes. "This isn't just about winning. It's about showing the world you're not what they think. It's about claiming rewards that can help us. And," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "it's about doing it somewhere public, where whatever is watching us might think twice before acting." The students fell silent, considering. Lena nodded slowly. Marcus's pacing stopped, a fierce light entering his eyes. Kale shrugged, but a faint smile touched his lips. Over the next week, training intensified. Alex drilled them in basic combat forms, but his real focus was on helping them control their nascent powers. For Lena, that meant meditation, sitting in the overgrown garden, learning to sense the void without being consumed by it. She described it as listening to the silence between heartbeats, and sometimes the air around her would shimmer, threatening to tear. Alex watched, heart in his throat, ready to pull her back if she slipped too far. For Kale, control was about precision. Alex had him practice on small things, freezing a falling leaf in midair, slowing the drip of water from a leaky pipe. At first, Kale's time manipulation was clumsy, exhausting him after a few seconds. But gradually, he learned to focus, to extend the effect without draining himself completely. During one session, he managed to freeze a sparring match between Marcus and another student for a full 3 seconds, leaving Marcus blinking in confusion when time resumed. Marcus's training was the most volatile. His Bloodlord potential manifested as surges of strength and aggression, but they came unpredictably, often leaving him raging and exhausted. Alex worked with him on channeling that anger, turning it into controlled strikes. They used the broken training dummies, and sometimes, when Marcus tapped into his power, the dummies would splinter as if hit by a sledgehammer. The other students, a shy girl with nascent spirit weaver abilities, a boy who could manipulate earth in flickers, trained alongside them, their own hidden potentials slowly unfurling under Alex's guidance. With each breakthrough, Alex felt the familiar rush of system notifications, his own stats inching upward. His mentor's gaze had evolved slightly, now showing not just potential, but faint progress bars for each student's mastery. It was a small comfort, a sign that he wasn't entirely useless. Registration day arrived. Alex led his team, Lena, Kale, Marcus, and 2 others, through the bustling streets of the capital city. The central arena loomed ahead, a colossal structure of gleaming white stone and enchanted metals, a stark contrast to their ramshackle academy. Crowds thronged the entrance, students from prestigious academies in polished uniforms casting disdainful looks at Alex's group in their patched robes. "Look, it's the freak show from Haven's End," sneered a boy with a Pyromancer class emblem on his chest. His friends laughed. Marcus tensed, but Alex placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ignore them. Save it for the arena." Inside, the scale was overwhelming. The tournament grounds were divided into multiple rings, each with energy barriers to contain the fights. Vendors sold potions and gear, their shouts adding to the din. Alex registered his team, handing over their academy credentials. The clerk, a bored-looking woman with a system clerk class, barely glanced at them. Haven's End. Lowest division. First match in Ring 7, 1 hour. Their first opponents were from a minor academy called Stoneheart. The team consisted of 5 Earthshapers, their abilities focused on defense and slow, powerful strikes. As they took their positions in the ring, the crowd in the stands, mostly sparse for this low-tier match, chattered dismissively. The bell rang. What followed was less a fight and more a demonstration. Kale, looking bored, raised a hand. Time slowed to a crawl for the Stoneheart team. They moved as if through thick mud, their expressions shifting to confusion and panic. Lena didn't even attack. She simply stood still, and the space around her opponents warped slightly, disorienting them further. Marcus, with a grin, darted forward. In normal time, he was a blur. He disarmed the first Earth Shaper with a twist of his wrist, tapped the second on the shoulder hard enough to stagger him, and swept the legs out from under the third. It was over in 10 seconds of real time. The crowd fell silent, then erupted into murmurs. The referee, a battle judge, stared, then announced, "Haven's End wins by incapacitation." Alex felt a surge of system rewards, plus 50 mentor points, plus 5 to all stats, skill coordinated strike unlocked. He pushed down the elation, focusing on his students. They looked confident, not arrogant, but assured. It was a start. The next rounds passed in a similar blur. In the second match, against a team of wind callers, Lena finally acted. When a gust of razor-sharp wind threatened to slice through Kale, she flicked her fingers. A tiny rift opened in front of him, swallowing the attack. Then, with a gesture, she redirected it back, sending the wind callers tumbling. The crowd gasped. By the third match, word had spread. More spectators filled the stands for Haven's End's fights. Their opponents, a team from a mid-tier academy, came prepared with anti-magic tactics. But Kale had been practicing. He didn't just slow time. He created pockets of accelerated time for his teammates, allowing Marcus to strike faster than the eye could follow. Lena used void tendrils, wispy, dark extensions of her will, to disrupt enemy formations. They won again decisively. After that victory, as Alex was guiding his students back to their designated rest area, a man approached. He was impeccably dressed in rich silks, a gold, merchant prince, class emblem pinned to his lapel. His smile was polished, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "Alexander, isn't it?" the man said, extending a hand. "Lord Alistair Vance. I've been watching your team. Remarkable performance for a low-tier academy." Alex shook his hand cautiously. "Thank you, Lord Vance. My students have worked hard." "Hardly seems like enough to explain it," Vance said smoothly, his gaze sweeping over Lena, Kale, and Marcus. "I'm a sponsor for many rising talents. I provide resources, gear, training facilities, system credits. In return, I ask for a share of tournament winnings and first refusal on any future contracts." Alex's instinct screamed. The offer was too good, too sudden. "We're flattered, but we're just here to compete." Vance's smile didn't waver. "Of course. Think about it. The rewards from this tournament are substantial, but with my backing, you could aim higher. The regional championships, perhaps. I have a box in the upper stands. Join me after your next match. We can discuss details." He handed Alex a sleek, engraved token. "My private channel. Use it when you're ready." As Vance walked away, Lena moved closer to Alex. "He smells like old money and lies," she whispered. Kale, uncharacteristically alert, added, "His time, it's out of sync. Like he's using artifacts to appear younger than he is." Alex pocketed the token, a cold weight settling in his stomach. They continued to dominate. In the quarterfinals, Kale faced a Time Weaver from a rival academy, a rare class that should have been his hard counter. But Kale's raw potential outshone trained skill. He didn't just manipulate time. He twisted it, creating a loop where the Time Weaver's own attacks turned back on themselves. The match ended with the opponent disqualified for self-inflicted injuries. The semifinals were against a team of beast tamers with monstrous companions. Marcus, tapping deeper into his Blood Lord abilities, entered a state where his strength multiplied with each hit he took. He wrestled a scaled wolf beast to the ground, his eyes glowing crimson. Lena sealed the victory by opening a void portal beneath the remaining beasts, dropping them into a harmless pocket dimension she'd learned to create. After that match, Alex's system rewards were staggering. Plus 200 mentor points, plus 20 to all stats, class evolution progress, 15%. He could feel the power thrumming through him. His senses sharper, his mind clearer. But the anxiety grew. Crowds cheered for them now. But he saw the jealous glares from other academies, the speculative looks from officials. That evening, as the sun set over the arena, Alex decided to meet Vance. He left his students in their rented quarters, a modest room paid for with their early winnings, and made his way to the upper stands. Vance's private box was opulent, with plush seats and a crystal-clear view of the arena below. Vance sat alone, sipping from a goblet. "Alexander," Vance said, gesturing to a seat. "I knew you'd come. Your students are extraordinary. That Chronomancer boy, Kale, is it? His time manipulation is unprecedented for his age. And the girl, Lena, the void bends to her will. It's not just talent. It's something more." Alex remained standing. "What do you want, Lord Vance?" Vance set down his goblet, his smile fading into something colder. "I want to acquire them. Your students. Oh, not in a crude way. I'll offer you a fortune, enough to retire comfortably. You hand over their contracts, and I'll make them the centerpiece of my stable. With my resources, they'll become legends. You'll be remembered as the teacher who discovered them." Alex's blood ran cold. "They're not commodities. They're my students." "Are they?" Vance leaned forward. "I've done my research, Alexander. Haven's End Academy is on the verge of collapse. Your class, Pedagogue, is listed as useless. Yet here you are, with students performing miracles. I have sources in the system administration. There are rumors of an ability that can see hidden potential. Mentor's gaze, they call it." Alex froze. How could he know? The enforcers hadn't detected it. Vance's eyes gleamed. "Don't look so surprised. The system has leaks, and I have ears everywhere. That ability is worth more than any artifact. With it, I could find other diamonds in the rough. But for now, I'll settle for the ones you've already polished. Name your price." "No," Alex said, the word sharp in the quiet box. Vance's expression hardened. "A shame. You're making a mistake. This tournament will end, and then what? You'll go back to your crumbling academy, with system enforcers watching and who knows what else lurking. I can offer protection. Without me, well, let's just say the world isn't kind to anomalies. He stood, straightening his jacket. Think on it. The finals are tomorrow. After you win, and you will win, I'll expect an answer. If it's no, I'll have to find other ways to acquire what I want. And I always get what I want. He left Alex standing there, the noise of the arena below suddenly feeling distant and hollow. Alex clutched the token in his pocket, now feeling like a shackle. He had entered the tournament to prove his students' worth safely, but he had walked them into a glittering trap. Lord Vance knew about Mentor's gaze. He wanted to own them, and if Alex refused, the threat was clear. Vance would take them anyway. As Alex walked back to the inn, the weight of the revelation settled over him. The tournament's rewards meant nothing if they cost his students their freedom. Tomorrow's finals loomed, not as a triumph, but as a prelude to a new kind of battle, one where the enemy wasn't in the arena, but in the shadows, with wealth and influence as his weapons. And Alex, the useless teacher, would have to find a way to protect his future tyrants from a predator who saw them as nothing more than assets to be acquired. The grand arena of Viridia hummed with an electric tension that morning, a palpable force that seemed to vibrate through the very stone benches. Sunlight streamed through the crystalline dome overhead, casting prismatic patterns across the sand-covered floor where blood, sweat, and magic had mingled over the past week. Alex stood at the edge of his team's preparation area, his fingers tightening around the railing until his knuckles turned white. The previous night's confrontation with Lord Alistair Vance played on a loop in his mind. The noble's cold smile, the thinly veiled threat, the way he'd said acquire, as if Alex's students were commodities. Teacher. Lena's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood beside him, her usual quiet demeanor replaced by a focused intensity. Her dark hair was tied back, and her eyes, once dull and resigned, now held a flicker of something deeper, like stars glimpsed through a break in storm clouds. Behind her, Cale leaned against a pillar, looking deceptively relaxed, though Alex noticed the slight tremor in his hands. Marcus paced nearby, cracking his knuckles rhythmically, his gaze fixed on the opposing team's entrance across the arena. They're here, Marcus growled. The rival academy's team emerged from their tunnel like conquering heroes. Led by their captain, a tall youth named Darian with the Stormcaller class, they moved with a swagger that set Alex's teeth on edge. Darian's eyes swept over Alex's students with open contempt, lingering on Lena with particular interest. The crowd roared, a mix of cheers and jeers, as the announcer's voice boomed through enchanted amplifiers. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the finals of the Grand Academia Tournament. On one side, the underdogs from the remote Oakhaven Academy, the so-called problem children who've shocked us all. And on the other, the reigning champions from the prestigious Stormcrest Academy. Alex turned to his students. Remember the plan. Stick to controlled displays. We're here to prove you're legitimate, not to scare everyone to death. Cale finished with a lazy grin. We know, teacher, but they're not playing nice. Look at Darian's belt. Alex's eyes narrowed. Darian wore an ornate silver buckle that pulsed with a faint, sickly green light. Alex's Pedagogue class didn't grant combat detection skills, but his mentor's gaze flickered involuntarily, showing him hints of corrupted energy woven into the metal. Forbidden artifacts. Vance is doing, no doubt. Stay alert, Alex said quietly. If they cheat, we adapt. But do not lose control. The match began with a blast of the referee's horn. The arena was divided into 3 zones for the team battle. Each student would face one opponent simultaneously, with the first team to score 2 victories winning. Lena was paired against Darian, Cale against a lithe girl with Phantom Dagger class, and Marcus against a hulking boy who bore this stone golem designation. From the start, it was clear Stormcrest had come prepared. Darian didn't just wield lightning. He manipulated it with a precision that spoke of expensive training and enhanced gear. Lena dodged his first bolt, her void energy allowing her to slip through space in brief, blurring movements. But Darian pressed, his attacks growing faster, more aggressive. Running won't save you, freak. Darian shouted, his voice carrying over the crackle of electricity. Your little tricks are nothing compared to real power. Alex watched, heart hammering. Lena was holding back, using only minor spatial distortions to evade. Good. She was following the plan. But Darian's aggression was escalating. His lightning began to arc in patterns that seemed designed not to defeat, but to maim. In Kale's zone, things were equally tense. The Phantom Dagger Girl moved like smoke, her blades passing through Kale's slowed time fields with eerie ease. Kale was sweating, his usual lazy confidence gone. He'd frozen time twice already to avoid lethal strikes, but each use drained him visibly. He's tiring, Alex muttered to himself. Too fast. Marcus, at least, was holding his own. His Bloodlord abilities let him match the stone golem's strength blow for blow, their clash sending shockwaves through the sand. But even there, Alex saw the signs. The golem's skin glinted with metallic sheen, likely enhanced by alchemical treatments. Then it happened. Darian fainted left, and as Lena shifted to avoid, he slammed his palm against his belt buckle. The green light flared, and a wave of null energy shot forth, a spell designed to disrupt mana channels. It shouldn't have affected Lena, given her mana-devoid nature, but the artifact was corrupted, tuned to something deeper. It struck her not as a mana disruption, but as a psychic scream that targeted her connection to the void. Lena staggered, clutching her head. Darian didn't hesitate. He raised both hands, gathering a concentrated bolt of lightning that crackled with black energy, a forbidden fusion spell. This ends now, he roared. Lena dodged. Alex shouted, but she was disoriented, the void whispers in her mind turning to chaos. Across the arena, Kale saw Lena's distress. In that moment of distraction, the Phantom Dagger Girl struck. Her blade phased through Kale's time-slowing field, aimed straight for his heart. Kale twisted, but not enough. The dagger sank into his shoulder, and the girl whispered an activation word. The blade glowed violet, and Kale screamed as temporal poison surged into his veins, a substance designed to unravel a Chronomancer's connection to time itself. Kale. Alex's voice was raw. Kale collapsed, his body convulsing, sand sticking to the blood spreading from his wound. The referee moved to intervene, but Darian waved a hand, and a barrier of crackling energy sealed the zone, another illegal artifact use. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmurs. Stop the match. Alex yelled at the officials, but they were hesitating, likely bribed or threatened by Vance's influence. Lena saw Kale fall. She saw the violet poison crawling up his neck, saw his eyes losing focus. Something inside her snapped. The void whispers, usually a distant chorus, became a roaring torrent. Her vision darkened at the edges, and the world seemed to stretch thin. Darian laughed, preparing another bolt. One down. Who's next? No. Lena's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried through the arena like a cold wind. She stood straight, and the air around her began to warp. The sand at her feet drifted upward, defying gravity. Her eyes turned pitch black, swallowing the light. Darian's smile faltered as his lightning fizzled out, absorbed into the growing darkness around her. What is this? He stammered, backing away. Alex felt it through his mentor's gaze, a surge of power so vast it made his head spin. Lena's hidden class, Void Empress, wasn't just awakening, it was erupting. Lena, stop, he cried, pushing against the railing. You'll kill everyone. But she didn't hear him. Her gaze was fixed on Darian, on the boy who'd hurt her friend. She raised a hand, and space itself tore. A point of absolute blackness appeared above the arena, a void singularity, small at first, but growing, pulling at the light, the sound, the very air. Benches creaked as spectators were dragged from their seats. The crystalline dome cracked, shards spiraling into the darkness. Darian screamed, his body lifting off the ground, pulled toward the singularity. His teammates abandoned their matches, fleeing for the exits, but the pull was relentless. Marcus grabbed Kale, dragging him back, his Bloodlord strength straining against the force. Alex didn't think. He vaulted over the railing, hitting the sand hard. His stats had grown through his students' successes, enhanced speed, durability, but they were nothing compared to this. Still, he ran, sand whipping around him, his lungs burning. Lena. She turned her head slightly, and for a moment, he saw the girl beneath the power, terrified, overwhelmed. The singularity expanded, now the size of a small house. The arena's structural enchantments failed with a sound like breaking glass. Alex reached her, grabbing her shoulders. Look at me. he shouted over the roar of collapsing reality. You are not a monster. You are Lena, my student. Control it. Her black eyes met his, and he poured every ounce of his pedagogue will into his words, his mentor's gaze showing him the fragile thread of her consciousness amidst the void. Remember who you are? Remember Kale needs you. A tremor went through her. The singularity wavered, its growth slowing. She gasped, and the blackness in her eyes receded, replaced by tears. Teacher, I can't. Yes, you can, Alex said, his voice softening. Close it. Slowly. She nodded, trembling. With a shuddering breath, she clenched her fist. The void singularity imploded with a soundless flash, leaving behind a perfect sphere of missing arena floor and a ringing silence. The pull vanished, and Darian dropped to the sand, unconscious but alive. The crowd was dead quiet, thousands of faces staring in stunned horror. Then the whispers began. Void. Anomaly. System breach. Alex helped Lena to her feet, her legs wobbling. Marcus joined them, Kale slung over his shoulder, pale but breathing. The referee finally stepped forward, his face ashen. The match is concluded. Oakhaven Academy is disqualified for uncontrolled power display. But no one cared about the match anymore. All eyes were on Lena, on the raw, world-ending potential she'd just revealed. Alex felt a chill as his system interface flickered with notifications. Massive stat boosts from Lena's near breakthrough, but also warnings. Attention, anomalous energy spike detected. Threat level, catastrophic. Before he could process it, the arena's main gates slammed open. Not tournament officials, but figures in sleek silver armor marked with the system's emblem. Enforcers, a full squad this time, twice as many as before. They marched in formation, their leader, a woman with cold blue eyes, and the Inquisitor, class tag visible above her head, holding up a crystalline tablet. By order of the System Oversight Committee, she announced, her voice amplified and emotionless. Alex Reed and students Lena Voss, Kale Wren, and Marcus Thorne are hereby placed under arrest for willful manipulation of system protocols, unauthorized class evolution, and posing an existential threat to regional stability. Resistance will be met with lethal force. She lowered the tablet, and arrest warrants glowed in the air above it, bearing their names and faces. The crowd erupted, not in cheers, but in fear and outrage. Some pointed accusingly, others fled. Alex stood protectively in front of his students, his mind racing. Vance had moved faster than he'd anticipated, using Lena's outburst as the perfect excuse. The tournament hadn't been a trap, it had been a stage, and they'd played their parts perfectly. Lena looked at him, her voice small. I'm sorry, teacher. It's not your fault, Alex said quietly, his eyes on the advancing enforcers. It's mine. I should have seen this coming. But as the enforcers surrounded them, weapons humming to life, Alex felt something else beneath the fear, a grim determination. His students had shown their true power today, and the world had seen it. Now, they would have to face the consequences. And he, the useless teacher, would have to become something more to protect them. The arena's roar had barely faded into stunned silence when the system enforcers descended. Their polished silver armor gleamed under the fractured arena lights, each step echoing with the finality of a closing cell door. Alex stood before his students, Lena, Kale, Rook, and the others, their faces pale with shock and lingering fury. The crowd's murmurs swirled around them like a gathering storm. Alexander Vance, designated Pedagogue, and your registered students, the lead enforcer announced, his voice amplified by a system module. You are hereby detained for suspicion of system manipulation, unauthorized class manifestation, and posing a catastrophic threat to public safety. Resistance will be met with lethal force. Alex's heart hammered against his ribs. He could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes upon them, some fearful, some curious, some gloating. Lord Vance's smug face flashed in his memory from the sponsor's booth, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. This was his doing. The tournament, the artifacts, the exposure, all orchestrated to force their hand. Teacher, Lena whispered, her hands still trembling from the void energy she'd barely contained. The air around her crackled with residual spatial distortions. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. It's not your fault. Alex cut in softly, his eyes never leaving the enforcers. He activated Minter's gaze, instinctively, not on his students, but on the approaching figures. Their classes flashed before him: System Justiciar, Lawbringer, Order Enforcer. All mid-tier combat classes with abilities geared towards suppression and containment. Their levels ranged from 25 to 30, far above his own Pedagogue level of 18, but below what his students could unleash if pushed. Yet fighting here would be suicide. The arena was packed with innocents, and more enforcers were likely on the way. "We'll go peacefully," Alex said, raising his hand slowly. "But my students are exhausted from the match. They need medical attention." The lead enforcer, a stern woman with a scar across her jaw, narrowed her eyes. "Your concern is noted. They'll be treated under system supervision. Now come." As they were herded toward the exit, Alex caught Kale's eye. The boy was leaning heavily on Rook, his skin pale from the temporal poisoning. Despite his weakness, Kale gave a barely perceptible nod. They'd drilled emergency scenarios during their dungeon dives, improvised escapes, silent signals, fallback points. Alex had never imagined they'd need them in broad daylight, surrounded by authorities. Just as they reached the arena's main gate, a commotion erupted from the sponsor section. Lord Vance stood, his voice projecting with practiced charm. "Enforcers, a moment, if you please. As their sponsor, I must insist on ensuring their well-being. The boy, Kale, requires immediate antidote for temporal poisoning. I have it here." He held up a small vial, its contents glowing with a soft blue light. The enforcers hesitated, their protocols conflicting with noble privilege. In that split second of distraction, Alex acted. "Now," he hissed. Lena didn't need to be told twice. With a gasp of effort, she tore a tiny rift in the air beside them. Not the catastrophic singularity from before, but a narrow, controlled portal just large enough for a person. It shimmered with dark energy, leading to somewhere outside the arena walls. The enforcers shouted, raising containment fields, but Rook was already moving. His blood lord potential flared, not in violence, but in enhanced speed. He shoved Kale through the portal first, then grabbed Lena and pulled her after. "Go!" Alex yelled at the others. Mira, the quiet girl with nascent Soulweaver abilities, and Jax, the burly boy hiding Earthshaker potential. They scrambled through, Alex bringing up the rear. As he leaped, he felt a containment beam graze his leg, searing through his robes. He tumbled into darkness, the portal snapping shut behind him. They emerged in a dank alley behind the arena, the sounds of chaos muffled by thick stone walls. The air smelled of garbage and damp earth. For a moment, no one spoke, their breaths coming in ragged pants. "Everyone okay?" Alex asked, pushing himself up. His leg throbbed where the beam had hit, but his boosted vitality, courtesy of his students' tournament wins, was already knitting the flesh. A system notification flickered at the edge of his vision. Escape initiated. Threat level, high. Mentor's guidance active. Plus 10% to group evasion for 1 hour. Lena nodded, her eyes wide with adrenaline. I didn't know I could do that so precisely." "You're learning," Alex said, offering a strained smile. "But we can't stay here. They'll lock down the city." Kale coughed, clutching his chest. "The poison, it's slowing my healing. I need that antidote." "We'll get it," Alex promised, though he had no idea how. His mind raced. The academy was compromised. The enforcers would swarm it. Their only hope was the wilderness beyond the city walls, where system surveillance was patchy and monsters roamed freely. It was a desperate plan, but it was all they had. They moved through the back streets, sticking to shadows. Alex used Mentor's gaze periodically to scout ahead, spotting patrols before they could be seen. His stats had grown significantly from the tournament. His perception was now high enough to detect heartbeats from 50 feet away, and his agility let him move with silent grace. He wasn't a fighter, but he was becoming something else: a guide, a protector, a strategist. By nightfall, they'd reached the city's outer wall. It loomed 30 feet high, etched with system runes that glowed faintly in the dark. Beyond it lay the scarred wastes, a stretch of mutated forests and crumbling ruins left over from the apocalypse. "How do we get over?" Mira whispered, her small frame shivering. She'd always been timid, but her Soulweaver potential allowed her to sense emotions, and right now, she was drowning in the group's fear. Jax cracked his knuckles. "I could try to make a hole. My Earthshaker is getting stronger. Too loud, Rook grunted. We'd have every guard on us in seconds. Alex studied the wall. The runes were designed to detect unauthorized breaches, but they had gaps, places where the system's energy was thin, likely due to age or damage. He pointed to a section where the glow flickered erratically. There. Lena, can you open another portal? Just big enough to pass through, and on the other side. Lena took a deep breath, focusing. Her hands glowed with void energy, and she carefully drew a circle in the air. This time, the portal formed with less strain, a silent window to the wilderness beyond. One by one, they slipped through, Alex last. As he crossed, he glanced back at the city, the place that had mocked him, then feared him, and now hunted him. He felt a pang of loss, not for himself, but for the safety his students had just lost. The scarred wastes were eerily quiet at night. Twisted trees clawed at a starless sky, and the ground was littered with bones, both monster and human. They huddled in a shallow cave they found, its walls damp with moss. Alex used his growing knowledge stat to identify edible fungi and purify water with basic alchemy, skills he'd never needed before but now clung to like lifelines. What now, teacher? Kale asked, his voice weak. The temporal poison was eating at him, slowing his body's functions. Without the antidote, he might not last the week. Alex sat by a small fire, its light casting long shadows. We survive. We train. And we find out who's really behind this. As if on cue, a holographic message flickered into existence above the fire, a pre-recorded transmission triggered by their location. Lord Vance's face appeared, his expression no longer charming but cold and calculating. Alexander. The nobleman's voice echoed in the cave. I see you've chosen the hard way. No matter. Let me be clear, your students are anomalies. Their potential disrupts the system's balance, and there are those who would see such power controlled. I represent the Order of the Silent Scale, an organization dedicated to harvesting unique classes for the greater good. Surrender them to me, and you may go free. Resist, and you'll learn why we're called hunters. The message dissolved, leaving a heavy silence. Lena's fists clenched. He wants to use us. Like experiments. Worse, Alex said, his mind piecing it together. The tournament, the artifacts, the frame-up, it was all a recruitment drive. Vance had been testing their limits, pushing them to expose their power so he could justify taking them. And now that they'd fled, he'd send hunters to retrieve them by force. Over the next few days, they traveled deeper into the wastes. Alex pushed his students gently, using their environment as a training ground. Lena practiced opening and closing portals with precision, learning to create temporary shelters or divert monster attacks. Rook honed his Bloodlord abilities, enhancing the group's stamina for long marches. Jax and Mira worked on defensive techniques, raising earthen barriers and soothing frayed nerves with soul-calming whispers. But Kale was deteriorating. His skin took on a grayish hue, and his movements grew sluggish. Alex's mentor's gaze showed his health bar ticking down slowly, a grim reminder of their deadline. On the third day, they found a narrow canyon cutting through the wastes, a natural chasm with steep walls and a trickling stream at the bottom. It offered cover and fresh water, so they decided to rest there for the night. As dusk fell, Alex felt a prickle on the back of his neck. His perception stat screamed a warning. Everyone quiet, he whispered, motioning them behind a large boulder. From the canyon's rim above, figures emerged, 6 of them, clad in dark leather armor that blended with the shadows. They moved with predatory grace, their classes visible to Alex's gaze. Shadow Stalker, Trackmaster, Bounty Hunter. All specialized for pursuit and capture. Levels ranged from 22 to 28, lower than the Enforcers, but more dangerous in this terrain. At their head stood a woman with twin daggers, her eyes scanning the canyon floor with unnerving accuracy. Vance's hunters, Alex breathed. They found us. The hunters began descending the canyon walls, using grappling hooks and enhanced agility. They were methodical, spreading out to cut off escape routes. Alex's mind raced. They were outnumbered and outgunned, with Kale too weak to fight and the others exhausted from days on the run. The canyon walls loomed around them, a trap of their own making. Lena looked at Alex, her eyes wide with fear but also determination. What do we do, teacher? Alex met her gaze, then looked at each of his students. They were scared, yes, but they were also the future Void Empress, Chronomancer, Blood Lord, Tyrants in the making. And he was their architect. He took a deep breath, his own stats humming with potential earned through their struggles. "We fight," he said, his voice steady. "But not like they expect. Lena, when I give the signal, open a portal beneath their feet, not to escape, but to disorient. Rook, you'll take the lead. Jax, be ready to collapse the walls if needed. Mira, keep Kale safe. And Kale, save your strength. We'll get that antidote, I promise." The hunters reached the canyon floor, fanning out in a semicircle. The lead woman smiled, a cruel twist of her lips. "The Order sends its regards, Pedagogue. You've led us on a fun chase, but it ends here. Hand over the anomalies, and we might let you live." Alex stepped forward, putting himself between the hunters and his students. The system notifications buzzed in his mind, tallying his students' readiness, their fear, their resolve. He wasn't a warrior, but in that moment, he felt something shift, a deeper understanding of his class, of the power that came not from fighting, but from guiding others to fight. "They're not anomalies," Alex said, his voice carrying through the canyon. "They're my students, and you're not taking them." The hunters lunged, and the canyon erupted into chaos. The scarred wastes lived up to their name. Jagged rock formations rose like broken teeth from the canyon floor, casting long shadows in the late afternoon sun. Wind whistled through narrow passages, carrying the scent of dust and ozone, a remnant of whatever cataclysm had torn this landscape apart during the system apocalypse. Alex stood at the mouth of the narrow defile, his back pressed against cold stone. Beside him, his students formed a ragged line. Lyra, the girl once labeled mana-devoid, now held her hands outstretched, fingers trembling as faint purple energy crackled around them. Kale leaned heavily against a boulder, his face pale from temporal poisoning, sweat beading on his forehead. Rook, the violent troublemaker turned Blood Lord candidate, cracked his knuckles, eyes scanning the canyon rim above. "They're coming," Rook growled, his voice low and rough. "I can smell the bloodlust. 6 of them, maybe 7. Alex activated Mentor's gaze, the world shifting into hues of potential and danger. His students glowed with inner light. Lyra's void energy a swirling nebula of purple and black, Kale's temporal signature a flickering golden thread, Rook's blood aura a pulsing crimson. But beyond them, on the canyon rim, he saw the hunters, sharp-edged silhouettes against the sky, their classes flashing in his vision. Blade Phantom, Earth Shaker, Soul Archer. All combat specialists, all at least level 25. He was level 18, boosted from his students' achievements, but still outmatched. "Remember the plan," Alex said, forcing calm into his voice. "Lyra, you create distractions. Portals, spatial tiers, anything to break their formation. Kale, conserve your energy. One well-timed rewind could save a life. Rook, you're our frontline. Enhance whatever strength you can pull from the rest of us." Lyra nodded, her usual quietness replaced by focused intensity. I think I can do more than portals, teacher. The void whispers to me. It wants to be used." "Not yet," Alex cautioned. "We don't know what that might cost you." A shout echoed from above. "Surrender the anomalies, Pedagogue. Lord Vance promises mercy if you come quietly." The voice belonged to the lead hunter, a woman in dark leather armor, her face obscured by a mask. She stood at the canyon's edge, a curved blade gleaming in her hand. Alex recognized her class from his gaze. Blade Phantom, level 28. A specialist in hit-and-run tactics. "We've done nothing wrong," Alex called back, stalling for time. "The system framed us. Your students' power spikes are unnatural," the hunter replied. "The Order of the Silent Scale exists to maintain balance. Hand them over, or we'll take them by force." Rook spat on the ground. "Balance? You mean control? I've seen your kind before. Nobles who think they own everything." No more words were needed. The hunters moved. The Earth Shaker, a burly man with stone-like skin, slammed his fists into the canyon wall. The ground trembled, rocks dislodging from above. Alex shoved Lyra aside as a boulder crashed where she'd been standing. Dust filled the air, choking in thick. "Now!" Alex shouted. Lyra closed her eyes, then opened them to reveal pupils like miniature galaxies. She thrust her hands forward, and space tore. A jagged portal opened 10 feet above the earth shaker, disgorging a shower of sharpened void fragments. The hunter roared, raising stone arms to block, but several shards pierced his defenses, drawing blood. System notification flashed in Alex's vision. Asterisk student breakthrough detected. Lyra has manifested Void Shard ability. Mentor reward. +2 intelligence, +1 wisdom. Asterisk. But there was no time to celebrate. This soul archer fired from a hidden perch. An arrow of spectral energy shot toward Kale. The Chronomancer candidate saw it coming, his eyes widening. He raised a hand, golden light flaring. Time slowed. The arrow crawled through the air, giving Alex just enough warning to tackle Kale to the ground. The arrow embedded itself in stone where Kale's heart had been. Kale gasped, the effort draining him further. I can't hold it long. Don't have to, Alex said, helping him up. Just survive. The blade phantom descended. One moment she was on the rim, the next she was among them, blade flashing. Rook intercepted her, his own fists glowing red. He'd activated Blood Fury, enhancing his speed and strength by drawing on his own vitality. They clashed, steel against reinforced knuckles, in a blur of motion. Teacher, behind you. Lyra screamed. Alex spun. Another hunter, a shadow stalker, had slipped through the chaos. A dagger aimed for Alex's throat. Instinct took over. Alex ducked, feeling the blade graze his shoulder. Pain flared, but his boosted stats, Dexterity 22, Vitality 25, kept him moving. He grabbed the hunter's wrist, twisting until bone cracked. The dagger fell, but the shadow stalker wasn't alone. Two more hunters closed in. A Pyromancer and a Frost Weaver. Elemental attacks filled the canyon, fireballs and ice shards raining down. Alex pushed his students behind cover, taking a fireball to the chest. His robe smoldered, skin blistering beneath. He gritted his teeth, the system registering damage but not enough to incapacitate him. Not yet. We're pinned. Rook shouted, parrying another strike from the blade phantom. Blood dripped from a cut on his arm, but instead of weakening him, it seemed to fuel his power. His aura brightened. Lyra looked at Alex, desperation in her eyes. Teacher, I have to try something. The void, it's showing me how. Alex hesitated. He saw her potential through Minter's gaze, the nascent Void Empress, capable of bending reality itself. But unleashing that power untrained could consume her. Yet the alternative was death or capture. He nodded. Do it, but stay controlled. Lyra took a deep breath, then spread her arms wide. The air around her warped, purple energy swirling into a vortex. Portals opened not just above the hunters, but around them, dozens of them, each disgorging void tendrils that lashed out like whips. The Pyromancer screamed as a tendril wrapped around his leg, pulling him into a portal that snapped shut behind him. Gone. The other hunters faltered, their formation breaking. The Frost Weaver tried to freeze the portals, but her ice shattered against the void energy. Lyra's eyes glowed with otherworldly light, but Alex saw the strain. She was trembling, blood trickling from her nose. Kale now, Alex ordered. Kale, leaning against the boulder, focused on the earth shaker, who was charging toward Lyra. Time rewound. The hunter's forward momentum reversed, stumbling him backward. It was a small reversal, just 3 seconds, but it gave Lyra the opening she needed. A portal opened beneath the earth shaker's feet, and he fell into darkness. 2 down. For to go? But the effort cost Kale dearly. He collapsed, coughing blood. Temporal poisoning. The system's warning for overusing time magic without proper class evolution. Alex rushed to his side, checking his pulse. Weak but steady. Stay with me, Kale, Alex whispered. The remaining hunters regrouped. The blade phantom eyed them with new respect and fear. They're more dangerous than Vance said. Full assault. They attacked as one. The soul archer fired a volley of arrows. The shadow stalker flanked again. The blade phantom and a final hunter, a beast tamer, with a mutated wolf, charged straight on. Rook met the charge. He roared, and his blood aura exploded outward, enveloping Alex and Lyra. Alex felt a surge of strength, Bloodlord's boon, +5 strength, +3 endurance temporarily. He stood, ignoring his burns, and faced the shadow stalker. This time, he was ready. He dodged the dagger, landed a punch that cracked ribs, then followed with a kick that sent the hunter sprawling. Lyra, meanwhile, focused on the soul archer. She didn't open portals. Instead, she reached into the void and pulled. The archer's spectral arrows dissolved mid-air, their energy siphoned into nothingness. The hunter stared in disbelief as her primary weapon failed. But the blade phantom was the real threat. She danced around Rook's attacks, her blade leaving shallow cuts that bled profusely. Rook's blood fury was waning. He couldn't sustain it forever. Alex saw an opening. He lunged, not at the blade phantom, but at the beast tamer's wolf. A well-placed strike to its leg crippled it, and the beast tamer stumbled, distracted. Rook now, Alex yelled. Rook understood. He stopped trying to hit the blade phantom, and instead grabbed the wounded wolf, hurling it at her. She sliced it apart, but the momentary distraction was enough. Lyra opened a portal directly behind the hunter. Rook charged, tackling her through it. The portal closed, leaving only silence. The remaining hunters, the soul archer and beast tamer, froze. Their leader was gone. 2 of their number had been swallowed by the void. They looked at Alex, at Lyra standing defiant with void energy crackling around her, at Rook breathing heavily but unbroken, and at Kale lying unconscious but alive. They fled. Silence returned to the canyon, broken only by the wind and Lyra's ragged breathing. She sank to her knees, the void energy dissipating. Did we win? For now, Alex said, but his voice was strained. He looked down at his chest where the fireball had struck. The pain was intensifying, a deep, burning ache that spread with each heartbeat. His vision blurred. System notifications flashed, warnings about internal damage, critical health levels. He stumbled, catching himself on a rock. Lyra, Rook, check on Kale. He needs antidote. The words slurred. Darkness crept at the edges of his sight. He saw Lyra's face, pale with concern, rushing toward him. Rook's strong hands catching him as he fell. But it was all distant, like watching through water. Teacher. Lyra's voice, sharp with panic. Alex tried to reassure her, but no sound came out. He felt his own stats, boosted by his students' victories, but not enough to heal this. The system had rewarded him for their growth, but his class, Pedagogue, had no innate combat or healing abilities. His survival depended entirely on his students' success, and now, on their care. Rook lifted him gently. He's burning up. That fireball must have done more damage than we thought. Lyra's hands glowed with faint void energy, but she hesitated. I don't know how to heal. The void, it only destroys. Then we find someone who can, Rook said, his voice firm. We carry him. We keep moving. Alex drifted in and out of consciousness. He felt himself being lifted, carried through the canyon. He heard Lyra whispering, Please, teacher, hold on. He saw Rook's determined face, streaked with blood and sweat. He thought of Kale, still unconscious, and the others they'd left behind. His students, the future tyrants he'd nurtured, were now his only lifeline. The realization settled in his fading mind. His life was irrevocably tied to theirs. Every victory they achieved would strengthen him, but every defeat, every moment of weakness, would weaken him in turn. He was the architect of their legend, but he was also its most vulnerable pillar. As darkness finally claimed him, his last thought was not of fear, but of pride. They had fought, they had survived, and they would carry him forward, because he had taught them to be more than what the world called them. The canyon echoed with their footsteps, fading into the gathering dusk. The world swam back into focus through a haze of pain and smoke. Alex's first sensation was the cold, unyielding metal of a floor beneath him, followed by the sharp, medicinal scent of herbs and ozone. He blinked, his vision blurry, and saw the worried faces of his students hovering above him like moons in a dark sky. Teacher. Lyra's voice was a whisper, laced with a tension he hadn't heard before. Her silver hair, usually tied back neatly, fell in disarray around her shoulders, and her violet eyes held a new depth, a flicker of something ancient and vast. Alex tried to sit up, but a searing pain lanced through his chest. He gasped, collapsing back. Memories flooded back. The canyon battle, Vance's hunters, the pyromancer's fireball that had caught him square in the chest as he pushed Rook out of the way. He'd felt his ribs crack, his skin blister, and then darkness. Don't move. Kale said, his voice weary but firm. The lazy boy was anything but lazy now. His hands glowed with a soft, golden light as he held them over Alex's chest. Time manipulation, Alex realized. Kale was subtly accelerating his body's natural healing processes, rewinding the damage moment by agonizing moment. Sweat beaded on Kale's brow, and Alex noticed the boy's pallor. The poison from earlier fights still lingered, a shadow beneath his skin. Where are we? Alex managed, his voice a rasp. An abandoned system outpost, Rook grunted. The violent troublemaker was cleaning a bloodied knife with a rag, his movements precise. His eyes, once merely angry, now held a predatory gleam. The Blood Lord's influence, Alex thought. Found it about an hour's trek from the canyon. No signs of recent activity. Seems like the system pulled out years ago. Alex took in their surroundings. They were in a large, circular chamber, perhaps 20 meters across. The walls were made of dull, gray alloy, etched with faint system glyphs that glowed intermittently with a sickly green light. Broken consoles lined the perimeter, their screens dark and cracked. Dust coated everything, swirling in the beams of pale sunlight that filtered through a cracked dome overhead. In one corner, a makeshift bedroll had been laid out for him, and a small fire crackled in a rusted brazier, casting long, dancing shadows. The air was cold and stale, carrying the scent of decay and old metal. Lyra helped him sip water from a canteen. Her touch was gentle, but Alex felt a strange, cold energy radiating from her. The void, he realized. It was no longer just potential, it was part of her now. You've been unconscious for 2 days, she said softly. We thought we'd lost you. Her words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken fear. Alex looked at each of them. Lyra, her void powers simmering beneath the surface. Kale, fighting exhaustion to keep him alive. Rook, vigilant and hardened by battle. And the others, Mira, the quiet girl with nascent spirit weaver abilities, and Jax, the burly boy whose Titan class was slowly awakening. They were all here, battered but alive. And they'd saved him. A system notification flickered at the edge of his vision, persistent. He focused on it. System alert, mentor assessment. Alex, Pedagogue, level 18, level 22. Stats increased. Vitality plus 15, Wisdom plus 10, Charisma plus 8. New ability unlocked. Regenerative Aura, passive. Accelerates healing for self and nearby students based on bond level. Student breakthroughs detected asterisk. Lyra, Void Empress, Awakening Stage 3. Kale, Chronomancer, Awakening Stage 2. Rook, Blood Lord, Awakening Stage 2. Mentor rewards. Cumulative experience from student successes in battle and survival. Alex's eyes widened. For levels in 2 days? And a new ability? He could feel it already. A warm, tingling sensation spreading from his core, knitting his broken bones and burned flesh together faster than Kale's time manipulation alone could manage. His student's growth was fueling his own, just as his class promised. But it came with a price. The more they achieved, the bigger the target on their backs. Thank you, he said, his voice stronger now. All of you. You didn't have to carry me. Rook snorted. You're the only one who ever saw us as more than freaks. We weren't about to leave you. He sheathed his knife and stood, pacing the room like a caged animal. But we can't stay here forever. Vance's organization will send more hunters. Or worse. As if on cue, a low hum filled the chamber. The system glyphs on the walls flared brighter, and a console in the corner flickered to life, screen glowing with static. Everyone tensed, weapons drawn. But no enemies appeared. Instead, text began scrolling across the screen. Old logs, Alex realized, preserved in the outpost's failing memory banks. What is that? Mira whispered, her eyes wide. Alex struggled to his feet, leaning on Lyra for support. The regenerative aura was working. The pain had dulled to a manageable ache. He hobbled over to the console, Kale at his side. The boy's fingers danced over the cracked keyboard, manipulating time to stabilize the data stream. It's fragmented, Kale said, frowning. But I can piece some of it together. They gathered around as the logs resolved into readable text. Alex's heart sank as he read. Log entry, System Year 5 Post-Apocalypse. Subject, Apex Class Cultivation Protocol. The system's integration was not random. Analysis indicates engineered parameters to foster specific high-tier classes, void manipulators, time benders, blood sovereigns, etc. Designation: Apex classes. These individuals exhibit potential to reshape reality fragments. However, uncontrolled growth poses systemic instability. Protocol: monitor and, if necessary, neutralize anomalies before full awakening. ***. Log entry: System Year 8. Subject: Anomaly detection. Remote Academy Number 7, designated Misfit Haven, shows irregular power spikes. Students Lyra, Kale, Rook flagged as potential Apex carriers. Mentor Alex, Pedagogue, exhibits unique ability. Mentor's gaze may accelerate awakening. Risk assessment: high. Recommend intervention by Inquisition Division, ***. Log entry: System Year 9, final entry. Subject: Outpost decommissioning. Inquisition forces redirected to larger anomalies. This outpost abandoned. Warning: Apex classes, if left unchecked, may trigger resurgence of ancient conflicts predating system. Entity signatures detected in void realms suggest alignment with old ones. All personnel evacuate. ***. The screen went dark. Silence fell, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Alex felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. Engineered? The system apocalypse, the event that had shattered the world, killed billions, and forced humanity into a brutal struggle for survival, had been designed? And his students weren't just talented. They were part of some cultivation protocol? Targets for neutralization? So were experiments. Rook growled, his knuckles white around his knife hilt. And they want to put us down like rabid dogs. It's worse than that, Lyra said quietly. She had stepped away from the group, her back to them, staring at a section of wall where the alloy had corroded into a jagged, black fissure. While you were unconscious, teacher, I heard voices. From the void. Alex turned to her. Voices? She nodded, not looking at him. Whispers. At first, I thought it was just the power awakening. But they're coherent. They speak of an ancient war, a conflict between what they call the system architects and the old ones. The architects created the system to control reality, to prune away unpredictable elements. The old ones, they exist outside, in the voids between worlds. They want to break the system's hold. She finally turned, her eyes glowing with that eerie violet light. They say Apex classes like us are the key. We can bridge the gap. We can choose a side, or become a power of our own. Kale cursed under his breath. And Vance's organization? The Inquisition. Pawns, Lyra said. Or willing servants. The logs say they neutralize anomalies. But I think they're harvesting us. For the architects. Or maybe for something else. Alex's mind raced. Mentor's gaze had shown him their potential, but he'd never imagined this. He'd thought he was just teaching misfits to survive, to thrive. But he was cultivating weapons in a war he didn't understand. His students, these kids he'd come to care for, were caught in a cosmic struggle. He looked at their faces. Lyra, haunted by whispers from the abyss. Kale, fighting poison and exhaustion. Rook, vibrating with barely contained rage. Mira and Jax, scared but determined. They were waiting for him to lead, to decide. What do we do, teacher? Mira asked, her voice small. Alex took a deep breath, the regenerative aura soothing his wounds further. He walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of their eyes on him. The firelight cast his shadow large against the wall. We have two choices, he said, his voice steady now, carrying the authority he'd earned through their trials. We can stay hidden, find another outpost, another ruin, and try to survive off the grid. Hope the Inquisition and Vance's hunters forget about us. Rook shook his head. They won't. They'll keep coming. And we'll always be running. Alex nodded. Or we confront them. Head on. We use what we've learned about the system, about the ancient conflict. We strike back at Vance's organization, expose their experiments, and find out who's really pulling the strings. We stop being prey and become the hunters. Lyra's eyes gleamed. The void entities, they offer power. Knowledge. If we embrace it, we could be more than just targets. But it's dangerous, Kale said, wiping sweat from his brow. We're not fully awakened. And teacher, you're still hurt. I'm healing, Alex said, and it was true. The stats from their breakthroughs were flowing into him, mending his body, sharpening his mind. and we're stronger together than we've ever been. But this isn't just about strength. It's about choice. Do we hide and let this system, this engineered apocalypse, control our fate? Or do we fight back and carve our own path? He met each of their gazes. I won't order you. This is your decision as much as mine. But I'll tell you this. I became a teacher to help you unlock your potential, not to see you caged or killed. If standing up means risking everything, then I'm willing to risk it. Because you're not just my students. You're the future. And I believe you can change this broken world. Silence again, thicker this time. Rook was the first to move. He stepped forward, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder, a gesture of solidarity that would have been unthinkable months ago. I'm tired of running. Let's make them bleed. Lyra nodded, a faint, grim smile touching her lips. The void whispers of chaos. I say we answer. Kale sighed, but his eyes were determined. If we're going to rewrite time, might as well do it boldly. Mira and Jax added their agreement, their fears overshadowed by a newfound resolve. Alex felt a surge of pride and fear. They were choosing war, but they were choosing it together. Then we prepare, he said. We rest, we train, and we plan. Vance's local base is our first target. We hit them before they can send more hunters, and we find out what they know about the architects and the old ones. As they began to discuss strategies, Alex glanced at the dark console. The logs had given them a warning, but also a purpose. The system had marked them as anomalies. Very well. They would show it what anomalies could do. The chapter ended with Alex standing by the fire, his students around him, their shadows merging into one on the ruined wall. Outside, the wind howled through the broken dome, carrying the scent of ash and change. The decision was made. Hiding was no longer an option. The next move would be theirs, and the world would feel it. The abandoned outpost control room hummed with a tense energy, the glow of reactivated system consoles casting long shadows across the faces of Alex's students. He stood before them, the weight of their decision settling like armor on his shoulders. For 3 days, they had debated in the dim light, poring over the logs Lyra had deciphered from the void whispers. Now, the choice was made. We strike back, Alex said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Not as fugitives, but as architects of our own fate. Lyra, her eyes still holding flecks of void starlight from her communion, nodded slowly. The entities spoke of a local base, Vance's operations center in the Ironwood district. It's where they process anomalies before shipping them to the Inquisition's main facilities. Kale, the once lazy Chronomancer, leaned against a console, his fingers tracing invisible patterns in the air. If we hit it hard and fast, we might uncover more about this Apex-class program, and maybe find others like us. Roran, the Bloodlord candidate, cracked his knuckles, a faint red aura flickering around his fists. I'm tired of running. Let's give them a taste of what they're so afraid of. Alex activated his mentor's gaze, the ability now refined through countless uses. Over each student, he saw not just their current stats, but the shimmering potential of their true classes. Lyra's Void Empress form, a constellation of dark energy. Kale's Chronomancer mantle, woven from threads of time. Roran's Bloodlord aspect, a crimson storm of power. The others, Mira with her nascent Spirit Weaver class, Jax with his Earthshaker potential, glowed with similar promise. We have 1 week, Alex announced. 1 week to turn potential into precision. The training that followed was brutal, a symphony of clashing energies and strained voices in the outpost's cavernous training hall. Alex pushed them harder than ever before, using the insights from the system logs to tailor their exercises. For Lyra, he designed void manipulation drills. Your mana-devoid state isn't a weakness, he explained as she stood before a target dummy. It's a vacuum that hungers for everything. Don't resist it. Invite it in, then control what flows through. Lyra closed her eyes, her breathing slowing. The air around her grew cold, then began to warp. Shadows pooled at her feet, rising like ink in water. With a sharp exhale, she extended a hand, and a tendril of darkness lashed out, not destroying the dummy, but enveloping it in a sphere of absolute blackness. When the sphere dissipated seconds later, the dummy was gone, not disintegrated, but erased from existence. Good, Alex said, though his heart hammered against his ribs. Now do it faster. The Inquisition won't give you time to meditate. For Kale, time itself became the training partner. Alex had him practice micromanipulations, freezing droplets of water mid-fall, rewinding a thrown stone by half a second, creating localized time dilation fields. The strain showed in the sweat beading on Kale's forehead, in the tremble of his hands. I can't hold it for more than 3 seconds, Kale gasped after collapsing a time bubble around a training drone. You don't need to hold it, Alex corrected, helping him up. You need to apply it at the exact moment it matters. A half-second stutter in an enemy's attack. A micro-rewind to correct a misstep. Time isn't a hammer, it's a scalpel. Roran's training was more visceral. Alex had him spar against Myra's spirit projections, learning to channel his blood-enhanced strength with precision rather than rage. You're not a berserker, Alex called as Roran shattered a spectral warrior with a single punch. You're a tactician. Your blood doesn't just make you stronger, it lets you feel the flow of battle. Listen to it. By the 5th day, the improvements were tangible. Alex's own stats had surged from their efforts. Pedagogue level, 27. Students' collective breakthroughs, 14. Mentor's gaze, tier 3. Regenerative aura, active. He could now see not just potential, but immediate tactical data, weak points in defenses, optimal ability combinations, even faint predictions of enemy movements. The system rewarded him with each student's advancement, a cascade of notifications that both thrilled and terrified him. On the eve of the assault, they gathered around a holographic map Lyra had reconstructed from Void Whispered Intelligence. The Ironwood District base appeared as a multi-level complex buried beneath a derelict factory. 3 entry points, Jack said, his Earthshaker senses allowing him to interpret the structural data. Main gate here, heavily guarded. Ventilation shafts here, but likely trapped. And a waste disposal conduit that emerges half a kilometer away. We go through the conduit, Alex decided. It's the least expected. Roran and Jax will clear the path. Kale, you'll be our clock. Give us time stops if we encounter patrols. Lyra, you're our key. If we find locked doors or security fields, your void manipulation should bypass them. Mira raised a hand. What about the other anomalies they might be holding? The logs mentioned processing. Alex met her gaze. If we find prisoners, we free them. But our primary objective is intelligence. We need to know who Vance answers to, and what the Inquisition's endgame is with the Apex classes. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He wandered the outpost's corridors, his mind racing with scenarios. What if they were walking into a trap? What if his training hadn't been enough? A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. You're doubting yourself. Lyra stood in a doorway, her form silhouetted by the faint glow of a console. Is it that obvious? Alex asked wryly. To someone who's learned to see the spaces between things, yes. She joined him, looking out at the training hall where shadows still seemed to hold the echoes of their efforts. When you first saw what I could become, did you ever imagine this? A desperate assault on a secret base? No, but I always imagined you becoming something extraordinary. Lyra was silent for a moment. The void entities, they showed me fragments of the war. The system architects created the apocalypse to forge weapons against the old ones. Were those weapons, teacher? But weapons can choose who they cut. Alex placed a hand on her shoulder. We're not weapons. We're people. And tomorrow, we prove it. The waste conduit was every bit as foul as they'd anticipated. A cramped tunnel slick with unidentified fluids, the air thick with chemical smells that made their eyes water. Roran led the way, his enhanced strength allowing him to wrench aside rusted grates with minimal noise. Jax followed, his connection to earth and stone letting him sense vibrations ahead. Patrol above, Jax whispered, pressing a hand to the tunnel wall. 2 sets of boots. Passing now. Kale's eyes glowed faintly blue. I've got a time bubble ready if they stop. They didn't. The footsteps faded, and the group advanced, emerging into a maintenance sublevel. The contrast was jarring, from filth to sterile white corridors lit by harsh system-powered lights. Alex activated Mentor's gaze. The facility layout superimposed itself over his vision, highlighting security nodes and life sign clusters. This way, he murmured, leading them toward what the Void Intelligence had marked as the primary holding area. They encountered their first real obstacle at a security door, a shimmering energy field that hummed with lethal intensity. Lyra stepped forward, her hands moving in a slow, deliberate pattern. Shadows gathered at her fingertips, then extended toward the field. Instead of disrupting it, her void energy seemed to drink it. The field flickered, weakened, then dissolved entirely. Void consumes all energy, she explained quietly, even system-based ones. Beyond the door, they found the holding cells. It was worse than Alex had imagined. Rows of transparent containment units lined the chamber, each holding a person, some children, some adults, all with the faint aura of anomalous potential Alex could now recognize. Most were unconscious, hooked to monitoring equipment that displayed fluctuating system readouts. By the architects, Mira breathed, her spirit senses recoiling at the suffering in the room. Roran's fists clenched, his aura flaring crimson. "We're getting them out." "Not yet," Alex said, though the words tasted like ash. "We need the data first. Kale, see if you can access their terminals." While Kale worked at a console, his fingers blurring as he manipulated time to bypass security protocols, Alex moved between the cells. His mentor's gaze revealed tragic potentials. A girl who could have been a dreamweaver, her class suppressed by neural inhibitors. A boy with the spark of a phoenix ascendant, now dormant under sedation. "I've got it," Kale announced. "Transferring to your interface, teacher." Alex's system display flooded with files. Experiment logs, progress reports, and correspondence that made his blood run cold. Vance wasn't the mastermind. He was a mid-level facilitator. The orders came from higher up, from someone or something referred to only as the curator. The goal wasn't just neutralization of anomalies. It was harvesting, extracting the latent Apex class potential for something else. A project called Titan's Forge. "They're not trying to destroy what we are," Lyra said, reading over his shoulder. "They're trying to steal it." A sudden klaxon shattered the silence. Red lights began to strobe through the chamber. "They've detected the data breach," Jack shouted. "Time to go," Roran roared, already moving toward the cell controls. "Wait." Alex's gaze locked on a particular file, a manifest listing transfer schedules. "They're moving the most promising subjects today to a facility called the Ascension Spire. If we don't stop that transport." The main doors hissed open, not with the slow grind of security protocols, but with the smooth, ominous silence of authorized entry. A man stepped through, flanked by 6 guards in polished armor that gleamed with system enhancements. He wore the stark black uniform of the Inquisition, but where others had badges of rank, he bore a single symbol, a stylized eye within a gear. His gaze swept the room, lingering on Alex's students with clinical interest before settling on Alex himself. "So," the man said, his voice a dry rasp that seemed to suck the warmth from the air. "The useless teacher and his little anomalies. I must admit, I'm impressed you made it this far." Alex's mentor's gaze flared to life, revealing the man's class. System Inquisitor, level 42. Specialization, Anomaly Suppression. Threat Assessment, Extreme. The Inquisitor's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. "Did your little cheat ability tell you that?" Mentor's gaze, isn't it? How quaint. To think something so pathetic could cause so much trouble. He took a step forward, and the pressure in the room intensified. Alex's students shifted into combat stances, their powers awakening in response to the threat. "You should have stayed hidden," the Inquisitor continued. "But since you're here, let's see what happens when I break your toys." His guards raised their weapons, not conventional arms, but devices that glowed with nullification energy, designed specifically to counter anomalous abilities. Alex stepped between his students and the Inquisitor, his own stats, hard-won through their struggles, burning bright in his vision. "They're not toys," he said, his voice carrying through the blaring alarms. "They're my students, and you're about to learn exactly why that makes all the difference." The Inquisitor laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Oh, this should be entertaining. Do show me what a useless teacher can do." Around Alex, time slowed as Kale prepared his power. Shadows deepened as Lyra called the Void. Blood sang in the air as Roran embraced his class. And Alex, the Pedagogue, the architect of this moment, met the Inquisitor's gaze without flinching. The battle for their future was about to begin. The alarm's shriek died into a low, pulsing hum, but the tension in the sterile white corridor of Vance's base thickened like clotting blood. Commander Kale, the System Inquisitor, stood before them, a monolith of polished black armor etched with glowing silver runes that pulsed in time with the alarm. His helmet was featureless save for 2 slits of crimson light, where eyes should be. Behind him, 6 enhanced guards, hulking figures in gray combat suits, their limbs augmented with whirring mechanical joints, fanned out, energy rifles humming to life. "Hey, Pedagogue," Kale's voice emerged as a synthesized rasp, dripping with contempt. "I've scanned your records, Alex. A class so worthless the system itself barely acknowledges it. And yet, here you are, leading these anomalies into a den they cannot hope to escape." Alex felt the weight of his students behind him. Lyra, the Void Empress, stood with her hands clenched, shadows already pooling at her feet like spilled ink. Her eyes, usually a soft gray, now held flecks of starless night. To her left, Finn, the Chronomancer, had one hand raised, fingers twitching as if plucking invisible threads. The air around him shimmered faintly, time itself bending to his will. On Alex's right, Garrett, the Blood Lord, cracked his knuckles, a predatory grin spreading across his face as his skin took on a faint crimson hue. "We're not here to escape," Alex said, his voice steady despite the hammering of his heart. He activated Minter's gaze, and the world shifted. Overlays of potential and weakness bloomed across his vision. Kale's armor had a hairline fracture near the left shoulder joint, a flaw in the runic array. The guard's energy rifles had a half-second charge delay between shots. Lyra's void energy was coiled tight, ready to erupt, but needing precise direction. Information flooded him, not as raw data, but as instinct, a teacher's understanding of how to guide his pupils to victory. "We're here to shut this place down," Alex continued, taking a step forward. "And free those you've caged." Kale laughed, a sound like grinding gears. "Sentiment. The flaw of lesser classes. The curator's work is beyond your comprehension. These anomalies are resources to be harvested for Titan's Forge, a project that will reshape this broken world. You, however, are merely a bug to be crushed." He didn't give a signal. The guards opened fire. Bolts of searing blue energy lanced down the corridor. Alex didn't flinch. "Finn now," he shouted, the command laced with the authority of Minter's gaze. Finn's fingers snapped. The world stuttered. For 3 heartbeats, time slowed to a crawl. The energy bolts hung in the air, moving with glacial slowness. Lyra didn't need another order. She thrust her hands forward, and the shadows at her feet erupted into a wave of absolute blackness. It swallowed the energy bolts, extinguishing them with a sound like tearing velvet. The wave crashed into the front 2 guards, and where it touched, their armor dissolved into nothingness, leaving them stumbling, exposed. Garrett, the left guard's rifle, struck the power cell. Alex's voice cut through the chaos. Garrett moved, a blur of enhanced speed. He didn't punch the guard. He grabbed the rifle, his crimson-streaked fingers finding the slight bulge of the power cell at its base. With a grunt, he crushed it. The weapon exploded in a shower of sparks, knocking the guard back into the wall. But Kale was already moving. He ignored the guards, striding forward with impossible speed. A blade of condensed light extended from his armored wrist, humming with lethal intent. He aimed for Lyra. Lyra, portal behind him, 5 feet. Alex yelled. Lyra's eyes widened, but she obeyed. A rift of swirling darkness tore open behind Kale. As he thrust his blade toward her, she vanished, reappearing through the portal at his back. She slammed a palm against the fracture in his armor Alex had seen. Void energy surged, not a destructive blast, but a precise, invasive pulse. The runes on Kale's shoulder flickered and died. He roared, spinning, but Finn was ready. Slow his perception, 30%. Alex directed. Finn's hands wove a complex pattern. Kale's movements became sluggish, his reactions delayed by a fraction of a second. It was enough. Garrett lunged, his fist glowing with blood-red energy. He struck the same spot Lyra had weakened. The armor cracked, a web of fissures spreading. Kale staggered, but he was far from defeated. Guards, suppression pattern delta. He barked, his synthesized voice edged with fury. The remaining 4 guards regrouped, firing in staggered bursts, covering each other. The corridor became a deadly crossfire. Alex ducked behind a shattered console, his mind racing. Minter's gaze showed him the pattern. The guards were rotating their fire, leaving microgaps in their coverage. But his students were tiring. Lyra was breathing heavily, sweat beading on her forehead. Maintaining precise portals was draining. Finn's nose was bleeding, a trickle of crimson. Overusing time manipulation came with a cost. Garrett's enhancements were flickering, his skin paling. They're adapting. Lyra gasped, deflecting another energy bolt with a hastily conjured void shield. We need to end this, Garrett growled, wiping blood from a graze on his arm. Alex looked at them, really looked. Not just as students, but as the tyrants they were becoming. Lyra, who could unravel reality. Finn, who could rewrite moments. Garrett, who could turn pain into power. And he, the architect of their rise. His own stats, accumulated through their victories, hummed beneath his skin, enhanced reflexes, durability, a mind sharpened by countless lessons. He wasn't a fighter, but he was their teacher. New plan, Alex said, his voice low and urgent. Lyra, create a void singularity, small, controlled, at the ceiling above them. Finn, slow time in a bubble around it, just enough to delay its collapse. Garrett, when it goes, channel all their kinetic energy into Kale. I'll handle the rest. They didn't question. Trust, forged in dungeons and flight, held firm. Lyra raised both hands, her expression one of intense concentration. A point of absolute darkness formed above the guards, no larger than a coin. It sucked in light, the air around it warping. Finn gritted his teeth, blood dripping faster, and wrapped the singularity in a temporal field. It pulsed, held in stasis for a crucial second. Kale sensed the danger. Disrupt it, he ordered, but it was too late. Now, Alex shouted. Finn released his hold. The singularity collapsed. Not with a cataclysmic explosion, but with a soundless implosion that tore a chunk out of the ceiling and yanked the guards off their feet. In that moment of chaos, Garrett moved. He didn't attack physically. Instead, he spread his arms, and the crimson energy around him flared. He drew in the violent kinetic force of the implosion, the guards' stumbling momentum, the very shockwave in the air, and redirected it, funneling it into a single, concentrated beam of amplified force that slammed into Kale's cracked armor. The Inquisitor was thrown back, crashing through a reinforced door into a control room beyond. His armor shattered, pieces clattering to the floor. He lay amidst sparking consoles, his true form revealed, a man with pale, scarred skin and eyes that glowed with the same crimson as his helmet. He struggled to rise, one arm hanging limp. The guards, disoriented, were quickly subdued. Lyra sealed two in void bubbles. Finn froze another in a time lock, and Garrett disarmed the last with a brutal efficiency. But Kale wasn't finished. As Alex approached, the Inquisitor coughed, blood flecking his lips. You think this is a victory? He spat. The Curator has eyes everywhere. Titan's forge cannot be stopped. His good hand moved, fingers tapping a sequence on a hidden panel on his wrist. A holographic display flickered to life, showing a progress bar and a destination code. Central Nexus, priority alert. A distress signal, Alex realized, lunging forward. Too late, Kale grinned, a rictus of pain and triumph. The organization knows. They will come for you. For all of you. Your useless class won't save you then. Alex didn't hesitate. He wasn't a warrior, but he had the strength of his students' triumphs. A durability stat boosted by dungeon clears, a strength stat honed by their growth. He drove his fist into Kale's jaw, not with finesse, but with the accumulated weight of every lesson, every breakthrough, every moment he'd guided them from misfits to powers. Bone cracked. Kale's eyes rolled back, and he went still, the hologram fizzling out mid-transmission. Silence fell, broken only by the sputter of broken machinery and the heavy breathing of the students. Lyra let her void bubbles dissipate, the guards slumping unconscious. Finn released his time lock, swaying on his feet. Garrett leaned against a wall, his enhancements fading, leaving him looking drained but alert. Alex stood over Kale, his knuckles bleeding. He felt no triumph, only a cold certainty. They had won this battle, but the war had just escalated. Is he? Lyra asked softly, her eyes on the fallen Inquisitor. Alive, Alex said, checking the pulse. But the signal went out. They know where we are and what we can do. Finn wiped the blood from his nose. What now, teacher? The word hung in the air, teacher. Not a title of mockery, but one of respect, earned in fire and shadow. Alex looked at his students, the Void Empress, the Chronomancer, the Blood Lord, and the others emerging from hiding, their faces etched with exhaustion and awe. He thought of the prisoners they'd yet to free, of the curator's unknown reach, of the system's hidden agenda. His Pedagogue class, once deemed useless, had built this moment. Now, Alex said, his voice firm, we finish what we started. We free the prisoners, gather whatever data we can on Titan's Forge, and get out before reinforcements arrive. This isn't over. It's just the beginning. As they moved to secure the base, Alex couldn't shake the image of that progress bar, the signal winging its way to some distant, malevolent authority. The Inquisitor was defeated, but his final warning echoed in the sterile air. They were marked. And Alex, the architect of these tyrants, would need to teach them how to survive a world that now saw them not as anomalies, but as targets. The dust settled in the ruined command center of Vance's base, leaving behind the acrid scent of ozone and blood. Alex stood panting, his knuckles bruised from the final blow that had sent Inquisitor Kale crumpling to the floor. Around him, his students, no, his champions, breathed heavily, their powers still crackling in the air like afterimages of lightning. Lyra, the Void Empress, let the last of her void portals wink out with a sound like tearing silk. Her hands trembled slightly, not from exhaustion, but from the raw power she had channeled. She looked at Alex, her dark eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. Teacher, we did it. Finn, the Chronomancer, leaned against a shattered console, his breathing ragged. He had rewound time around Kale's guards so many times that the temporal echoes still shimmered at the edges of vision. For now, he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. That distress signal went out. They know where we are. Garrett, the Blood Lord, stood over the unconscious form of Kale, his crimson aura slowly fading. He had turned the Inquisitor's own kinetic enhancements against him, a brutal reversal that left Garrett's knuckles split and bleeding. What do we do with him? He asked, his voice rough. Alex's mind raced. The immediate threat was neutralized, but Kale's final act, sending that signal, hung over them like a guillotine blade. He could feel the system notifications piling up in his mental interface, buzzing with urgency, but he pushed them aside for now. First, they had to secure the area. Check for survivors, Alex ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through him. Free any prisoners. Gather whatever intelligence you can find. We need to know what this organization is planning next. As his students moved to obey, Alex finally allowed himself to look at the system messages flooding his vision. They scrolled past in glowing blue text, each one a testament to how far they had come. Student breakthrough detected. Lyra, Void Empress, has achieved Mastery Tier 3. Mentor rewards, plus 50 wisdom, plus 30 charisma, plus 20 luck. Student breakthrough detected. Finn, Chronomancer, has achieved Mastery Tier 3. Mentor rewards, plus 40 intelligence, plus 30 dexterity, plus 10 perception. Student breakthrough detected. Garrett, Bloodlord, has achieved Mastery Tier 3. Mentor rewards, plus 60 strength, plus 20 constitution, plus 10 endurance. Class evolution available. Due to exceptional student achievements and unique pedagogical impact, your class, Pedagogue, can evolve into Architect of Tyrants. Accept? Y/N. Alex stared at the final notification, his breath catching in his throat. Architect of Tyrants. The words carried a weight that settled deep in his bones. This wasn't just about teaching anymore. It was about shaping destinies, about building something that could withstand the chaos of this broken world. Without hesitation, he selected yes. A surge of energy unlike anything he had ever felt washed through him. It wasn't the violent rush of combat stats, but something deeper, more profound. Knowledge flooded his mind. Not just how to teach, but how to cultivate power, how to recognize potential in its rawest forms, how to guide others toward becoming forces of nature. His vision sharpened, and when he looked at his students, he didn't just see their current abilities. He saw the paths they could take, the legends they could become. Class evolution complete. You are now Architect of Tyrants. New abilities unlocked. Tyrants Insight. See the future growth paths of students. Foundation Builder. Establish institutions that enhance student development. Legacy Weaver. Bind student achievements to permanent bonuses for yourself and your institution. Alex took a deep breath, letting the new class settle into his being. He was no longer the useless teacher everyone had mocked. He was something else entirely. By the time his students returned, they had freed a dozen prisoners from the base's holding cells. Other anomalies, like themselves, their potentials suppressed or misunderstood. Among them was a young girl with silver hair and eyes that shimmered like mercury, her class, Gravity Weaver, hidden beneath a false designation of low-tier manipulator. She clung to Lyra's hand, trembling. "They were experimenting on us," the girl whispered, "trying to force our evolutions in controlled directions." Kale called it harvesting apex potential. Finn had gathered data crystals from the base's mainframe. He slotted one into a portable reader, and holographic logs flickered to life. "They're part of something called the Ascendancy Collective," he reported, his voice grim. "They believe the system apocalypse was engineered to create a new world order, and they want to control who rises to the top. We're not just threats to them, we're resources." Garrett dragged Kale's unconscious form to the center of the room. "What do we do with him?" he asked again, his tone making it clear what he thought the answer should be. Alex looked at the fallen Inquisitor, then at the frightened prisoners, then at his own students, bloodied, exhausted, but standing tall. He made a decision. "We take him with us," Alex said, "and we go home." The journey back to the ruins of their academy was tense and watchful. Every shadow seemed to hold potential ambushes, every rustle of wind a warning. But no attack came. Instead, as they emerged from the wilderness and approached the crumbling gates of the school, they found a crowd waiting. Word had spread faster than they could travel. Survivors from nearby settlements, former students who had fled when the enforcers came, even a few curious scouts from rival academies. All had gathered. They parted as Alex and his group approached, their expressions a mix of awe, fear, and hope. An older woman stepped forward, her face lined with hardship. She had been a cook at the academy before the collapse. "We heard what you did," she said, her voice trembling. "You stood against the ones who've been preying on us. You saved those kids." Lyra shifted uncomfortably and used to being seen as a hero. Finn kept his head down, but Alex could see the pride in the set of his shoulders. Garrett simply stared at the crowd, his expression unreadable. Alex raised his hands, and the crowd fell silent. "This academy was once a place for those deemed worthless," he said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet. "But worth isn't determined by the system's labels. It's forged in struggle, in growth, in the refusal to be broken. Today, we reclaim this place, not as a dumping ground for misfits, but as a sanctuary for hidden talents, a forge for those who will shape the future." He turned to his students. "Lyra, Finn, Garrett, you are this academy's first champions, its protectors and guides. Will you stand with me to rebuild it?" Lyra met his gaze, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in her eyes. "Always, teacher." Finn nodded. "Someone has to keep you from doing anything too reckless." Garrett cracked a rare smile. "I've always wanted to redecorate." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Alex's attention was drawn to the silver-haired girl from the base. She was staring at the academy's broken towers with something like longing. Alex knelt before her, using his new Tyrants insight. He saw it immediately, the potential for her to become a gravity tyrant, someone who could bend the very laws of physics to her will. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Alara," she whispered. "Would you like to stay here, Alara? To learn how to use your gift?" Tears welled in her mercury eyes. "Yes." In the days that followed, the academy became a hive of activity. Alex used his foundation builder ability to channel the system's energy into the very stones of the place. Walls repaired themselves, classrooms grew more spacious and equipped with training dummies that adapted to the user's abilities, and a central hall emerged with a crystalline focus that amplified pedagogical effects. Lyra took charge of security, weaving void wards around the perimeter that would alert them to any approach. Finn organized the intelligence they had gathered, creating a network of informants among the survivors. Garrett trained the new recruits, not just in combat, but in control, teaching them to harness their powers without being consumed by them. Alex spent his time with Alara and the other freed prisoners. With Tyrant's insight, he could see their growth paths clearly, and he tailored their training accordingly. A boy who thought he could only create small sparks was guided toward becoming a plasma archon. A girl who communicated with plants learned to shape them into living armor and weapons as a Dendro sovereign. Each breakthrough brought Alex new rewards through Legacy Weaver, strengthening not just himself but the Academy as a whole. The system recognized the institution as a sanctuary of potential, granting it bonuses to training speed and resource generation. But the peace was fragile. One evening, as Alex stood on the newly rebuilt watchtower, Lyra joined him. The stars were hidden behind a haze of atmospheric distortion, a lingering effect of the system apocalypse. The void entities are restless, Lyra said quietly. They whisper of something stirring in the deep places, something older than the system. They call it the first conflict. Alex frowned. What does that mean? I don't know yet. But they're afraid. And if beings that can unravel reality are afraid. She trailed off, her meaning clear. Below them, in the Academy's courtyard, Finn was teaching Alara how to fine-tune her gravity manipulations. She was making a stone float in intricate patterns, her concentration absolute. Garrett was leading a group through sparring drills, his commands sharp and effective. We're not ready for another war, Alex said, more to himself than to Lyra. We weren't ready for the first one either, she replied. But we survived, and now we're stronger. Alex looked at her. This girl who had been labeled mana-devoid, who had once been too afraid to embrace her power. Now she stood beside him as a Void Empress, her presence calm and certain. He thought of Finn, who had once been too lazy to get out of bed, now manipulating time with precision. Of Garrett, whose violence had been a liability, now channeled into protection. And he thought of himself, the useless teacher, the pedagogue, now the architect of Tyrants. A system notification flickered at the edge of his vision, a report from one of their scouts. The Ascendancy Collective was regrouping. They had taken note of the Academy's resurgence. They were coming. Alex didn't feel fear. He felt a strange, steady certainty. This was his purpose, not to fight the battles himself, but to ensure that those who could fight were prepared, to build a foundation that could withstand the storms to come. Call a meeting, he said to Lyra. We need to prepare. For the collective. For whatever this first conflict is. For everything. She nodded and turned to go, but paused. Teacher, thank you for not giving up on us. Alex watched her descend the tower stairs, her void cloak billowing slightly in the wind. He looked out over the academy, his academy, alive with light and activity. In the courtyard, Alara laughed as she made a dozen stones dance in the air like a constellation. Finn corrected her form with a patient smile. Garrett barked an order, and his trainees moved as one. They were no longer just students. They were the beginning of something new. A generation of tyrants, shaped not for domination, but for survival, for creation. And Alex, the once useless teacher, was their architect. He had no idea what the future held. The Ascendancy Collective, the void entity's warnings, the hidden agenda of the system itself. But he knew this. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And they would shape it, one lesson at a time. The wind picked up, carrying the sounds of training and laughter. Alex took a deep breath, and for the first time since the system apocalypse had turned his world upside down, he felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be.